Chapter 723. Bang! A player wearing Knights of the Blood's armor was sent flying backward. He landed on the ground and rolled a few times before stopping. He couldn't get up anymore. His eyes were filled with circles, and his head was shaking from side to side. He looked like he was in great pain. This person is the gatekeeper who tried to pick a fight with Wu Yin in the beginning. On the surrounding ground, the Knights of Blood Oath members who had been swaggering earlier were lying on the ground one after another. Their bodies were tossing and turning as they wailed. However, there was not much pain in their voices. Instead, it was more of discomfort. Wu Yin stood in the middle of the players on the ground with Heaven Gazer in his hand. He looked around him and he pursed his lips. He didn't look too pleased with the outcome of the battle. This was to be expected. With his strength, he could easily take care of these players who couldn't go to the front lines. However, because he was in the safe zone, his HP wouldn't be reduced, and this wasn't a duel, so it took him about 15 minutes to take care of all of them. Too slow, this efficiency. Wu Yin sighed and clicked his tongue. I haven't leveled up for half a month. Did I become weaker? How can I become weaker in the game world? If other players knew what Wu Yin was thinking, they would want to kill themselves by smashing their heads against a brick. They're basically a bunch of first-rate players. In the safe zone, it took him 15 minutes to take care of all of them, and he thinks he's weaker? If they had that kind of strength, no one in SAO would want to go out and level up. Wu Yin walked to the entrance of Knights of the Blood's HQ. He glanced at the players on the ground. He shook his head. A bunch of idiots who were used as tools. What's the point of thinking about this? Heathcliff, it's about time for him to show up. Wu Yin didn't wait for Heathcliff to show up. Another unexpected but reasonable person showed up. Yin? A familiar voice came from behind him. Wu Yin paused for a moment. He turned around and smiled when he saw the person. He waved at him. Oh, Kirito, you're here too? Kirito, who was standing not far away, finally recovered from the shock. He quickly ran to Wu Yin's side. What's going on? Kirito looked around at the players on the ground. He turned around and looked at Heaven Gazer in Wu Yin's hand. He asked in shock, You're at war with the Knights of Blood Oath? They kidnapped Asuna? Wu Yin choked on his breath. He almost choked to death. You think you can kidnap Asuna from me? Even Heathcliff won't be able to do it. That's true. Kirito smiled awkwardly. Then he pointed at his surroundings in confusion. Then what's going on? Well, it's just a small matter. It's not worth mentioning. Wu Yin put Heaven Gazer back on his back and looked at Kirito. By the way, why are you here? Heathcliff sent me an email. Kirito said with a serious face. He said it's something important. Wu Yin nodded. That's right. Kirito's strength is top-notch. Even if he didn't learn dual sword style like the original work, he's still one of the top 5 players in SAO. Perhaps, other than me and Heathcliff, he's also one of the top 5 players in SAO. Apart from Heathcliff and Heathcliff, he's the strongest player in SAO. Heathcliff has no reason not to invite someone like him. After all, his main goal is to raid Asuna. Since you're here, you must have been invited by Heathcliff as well, right? Kirito asked. His face turned serious when he saw Wu Yin nodding. He invited me, and now he invited you. It seems like his goal this time isn't as simple as it seems. I can only think of one thing. That's the only one. Wu Yin tilted his head and closed his eyes. The 75th floor's boss, Kirito, lowered his head. He took a deep breath and patted his cheeks to cheer himself up. He asked Wu Yin, Does Asuna know about this? She knows. Wu Yin sighed. She wanted to come with us, but I used Yui as an excuse to make her stay. What about you? Is Liz okay? Okay, that a big problem. Kirito smiled bitterly. With Liz's personality, she would have come even if she knew it would cost her life. That's why I didn't tell her about my guess. Maybe Heathcliff asked us to come here for some other reason? Kirito smirked and punched Wu Yin's chest. Besides, even if he invited us to raid the floor's boss, I don't think it'll be a problem since you're here with us. Wu Yin shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. You think so highly of me? Of course. Kirito crossed his arms and said seriously, If the most powerful monster in SAO is the floor's boss that appears every 25th floor, then you're the most powerful monster among us players. Hey, I'm still here. Wu Yin slapped Kirito's back, almost knocking him to the ground. If Asuna hears you calling me a monster, she'll catch you and cook you up. Kirito-kun is right. A powerful voice came from beside them. Heathcliff came out of the headquarters with 4 high-ranking members of the Knights of the Blood, Oath in tow. Heathcliff looked at Wu Yin, and he said something with a meaningful tone. Yin-kun, you're the most powerful player among us players, so we'll need your help to raid the floor's boss. So it's about the floor's boss. Kirito's face sank. He really hoped that Heathcliff didn't call them here for the floor's boss. It's not that he doesn't want to clear this game as soon as possible, but this floor's boss is too important. The floor's boss appears every 25th floor, and most of the players sacrifice themselves to clear it. The army paid a heavy price to clear the floor's boss on the 25th floor, and the clearers almost all died on the 50th floor. How many players will be sacrificed on the 75th floor this time? Kirito didn't want to see anyone sacrifice themselves. Even in the original work, Kirito didn't want to see anyone sacrifice themselves after experiencing the cheater incident and the Moonlit Black Cats incident. Kirito didn't want to see anyone sacrifice themselves, let alone Kirito, who was living a much better life than the original work. Also, since Heathcliff called them here, it means that even Heathcliff can't do anything to the floor's boss this time. Otherwise, Heathcliff wouldn't have minded taking on the boss himself if he could have done alone. Aside from the high risk involved, the rewards are also unimaginably bountiful. If possible, no one would want to give up the boss reward, not even Wu Yin. Otherwise, he wouldn't have fought with the clearers for so long. Of course, that's just Kirito's opinion. Perhaps Heathcliff saw through Kirito's worries and smiled. Kirito-kun, don't worry. We have Yin-kun with us this time. I'm sure we'll be able to reduce our casualties to 0. Hearing this, Kirito's expression became a lot better, and he looked at Heathcliff. So what about the floor's boss? Let's go in and talk about the details. Kirito nodded and Wu Yin nodded. The group walked into the HQ together. As for the people on the ground, they've already been forgotten. Chapter 724, Knights of the Blood, HQ. In a conference room with glass walls, Heathcliff was sitting at the center of a large semicircular table. On his left and right were 2 high-ranking members of Knights of the Blood. They were dressed differently than normal members. In front of the table were Wu Yin and Kirito. Wu Yin pursed his lips when he saw Heathcliff and the others sitting in a row in front of him. They're letting their guests stand while they're sitting comfortably. What's more, they're putting on such a show. Are all big guilds like to put on airs like this? Heathcliff didn't know that Wu Yin already thought of him as a high-ranking member. He glanced at Wu Yin and Kirito before shifting his gaze to Wu Yin. Before I explain, Yin-kun, please accept my apology. It's my fault that you were treated like that in our HQ. Please forgive me. Wu Yin secretly despised Heathcliff. Does he think I can't see through him? Of course. Wu Yin pretended that he didn't care. He nodded and shrugged. Well, it's not all bad. At least I have them as my sparring partners. My rusty skills have recovered quite a bit. It's a good thing, oh? Heathcliff narrowed his eyes and chuckled. That's good. Kirito saw that the 2 of them were almost done with their business. He raised his head and said, Well then, can you explain the situation to us now? Heathcliff lowered his head, an indescribable light flashing in his eyes. It's just as you thought. I invited you here because we found the room of the 75th floor's boss. Kirito's expression froze. Wu Yin finally shifted his gaze to Heathcliff. Heathcliff saw their expressions and placed his hands in front of him. He placed his hands on the table and spoke to Wu Yin and Kirito as if he had everything under control. Yesterday, the clearers were clearing the labyrinth area as usual. We collected the map files of the 75th floor. Although it has been a while since we entered the labyrinth area, the clearers didn't make any sacrifices. But in order to prevent the clearers from sacrificing themselves, we slowed down our progress a lot. After all, we already predicted that the 75th floor's boss would be a tough fight, maybe even a fight to the death. Heathcliff's words were clear. Let alone Kirito, even Wu Yan's heart sank. Up until now, the players had conquered a total of 74 floors. Among these floors, Only the bosses on the 25th and 50th floors had extraordinarily large bodies and powerful combat strength. Only when clearing these two floors did the clearers have to pay an unimaginable amount of sacrifices. Now that they were starting to clear the 75th floor, the pressure that the incomparably powerful boss gave off was unimaginable. It's understandable that the clearers have to be cautious and slow down when clearing such a floor. Although we spent a lot of time collecting the map files of the labyrinth area, we didn't make any sacrifices, but Heathcliff's tone suddenly changed. Just yesterday, our party discovered the boss's room, so we sent out a party of 20 players from 5 guilds to investigate the boss's room. At this point, Heathcliff closed his eyes, making it impossible to see his current emotions from his pupils. First, we'll send 10 people to guard the entrance of the boss room. The other 10 will enter the room and gather information about the boss. Send 10 players to the boss's room to collect information. Kirito looked at Heathcliff anxiously. He had a bad feeling about this. Wu Yin crossed his arms and furrowed his brows as he looked at Heathcliff. From the looks of it, it didn't end well, did it? Heathcliff shook his head and said, "It wasn't bad, it was very bad." Heathcliff told them the cruel truth in a calm tone. The moment the boss appeared, the door to the boss's room suddenly closed. Kirito clenched his fists in anger. According to the report of the 10-man party, the door to the boss room had been closed for about 5 minutes. During this time, no matter how they used lockpicking skills or direct attacks, they were unable to open the door. However, after 5 minutes, the door suddenly opened on its own. What happened? Kirito gritted his teeth and asked. Wu Yen sighed. Since Heathcliff had found them and explained the situation to them, there could only be one conclusion. Heathcliff pursed his lips and closed his eyes. There's nothing in the room, be it the 10 players who went in to investigate or the boss. All of them had disappeared. There are no signs of the teleportation crystal leaving the scene. Those 10 people did not come back either. As for us in the Black Iron Palace at the bottom, we saw their names on the death list on the metal tablet. Kirito held his breath. His lips trembled for a moment before he smiled bitterly. There's no sign of the crystal leaving the room. Is it the crystal's area? Heathcliff nodded and looked at Wu Yen. Yin-kun, when you fought the boss on the 74th floor, I heard that the boss's room was also a crystal's area, right? Yeah. Wu Yen nodded. Because of this, Kobats from the army died. So, I think that from now on, all the boss rooms will be crystal nullification zones. Heathcliff announced a shocking piece of news, which silenced everyone present. Being in the crystal nullification zone, players would not be able to use crystal items. The transfer crystal used to teleport away, the recovery crystal used to recover HP, and the detoxification crystal used to dispel thousands of poisons would all be unusable. The recovery crystal and detoxification crystal aren't that bad. Even though they can't use the recovery crystal and detoxification crystal, they can still find other items to replace them. However, it's a different story if they can't use the transfer crystal. If they encounter a dangerous situation and can't use the transfer crystal, the number of deaths will increase greatly. In the future, if all the rooms of the boss room were to be crystal nullification zones, then the biggest premise of no sacrifice in the game would become an unattainable dream. In the worst-case scenario, the players might even retreat. At that time, the clearers will suffer an unprecedented blow to their strength. But if they don't defeat the boss, they won't be able to clear the game. However, that was not the only bad news. Heathcliff said to the two of them, apart from not being able to use crystal items, the 75th floor's boss room seems to have a setting where when the boss appears, it will close the door at the same time, cutting off the escape route of the players. If that's the case, if we want to take down this boss, we can only send out a party that can command the largest number of people in the area, and at the same time, gather as many top players as possible to help us. So, Yin-kun, Kirito-kun. Heathcliff straightened his back and looked at the two players in front of him. We really need your help. With the help of the Fey swordsman Wu Yen and the Black swordsman Kirito, I'm sure we'll be able to clear the boss no matter how difficult it is. Chapter 725. The entire meeting room was silent. No one said a word. Only Heathcliff's last sentence echoed in everyone's ears like an echo. Corrido took a deep breath. His expression was solemn. After a long time, he finally opened his mouth to speak. "I may be a solo player, but I'm also a member of the Clears." Corrido looked at Heathcliff and nodded firmly. "I'll be participating in the boss battle this time." Heathcliff nodded and looked at Wu Yen. His gaze was completely different from when he looked at Corrido. It's clear that Heathcliff cares about Wu Yen. Wu Yen smiled faintly at Heathcliff's reaction. "I'm not a member of the Clearers, but I did promise you that I will help you in the boss battle as the prize for Asuna's withdrawal. It's just that..." Wu Yen looked at Heathcliff with a smile. "I'm not a member of the Clearers, so if I'm the one who kills the boss, I won't share the loot with you." Hearing this, the higher-ups of the Knights of the Blood looked at each other. Corrido also had a helpless expression, but Heathcliff had a smile on his face. "Of course, Yen Kuan isn't a member of the Clearers. If you're the one who kills the boss, then the reward for killing the boss will naturally belong to you alone." Heathcliff's words made everyone speechless. Other than Wu Yen, everyone in the room was shocked. If there's no loot, will the Clearers participate in the boss battle? Even though the player's ultimate goal was to clear Aincrad, they would still participate in the raid for the sake of the bigger picture if they didn't get any loot. But there's a thorn in their heart, and that's not a good outcome. If things go wrong, Wu Yen will be viewed as an enemy by the Clearers. What is this Heathcliff thinking? Doesn't he know that Wu Yen and the Clearers are competitors? Wouldn't this worsen the original competitive relationship and cause both sides to become enemies? Also, Wu Yen is the same. Why would he propose such a condition that will likely be viewed as an enemy? What the people here didn't know is that the reason Wu Yen proposed such a condition is very simple and very simple. He's broke, that's right. He's broke. After spending a lot of money on the wedding, he still has 2, or rather, 3 CDs at home. Even if Asuna's money was put together, after this period of squandering, she had already used up all of it. Plus, Wu Yen hasn't leveled up at all, let alone the labyrinth area. He hasn't even ventured into the wilderness. He hasn't touched a single monster, so he didn't earn any money. His wallet is almost empty. If it wasn't for Heathcliff's invitation, Wu Yen would have gone to the labyrinth as well. Not to level up, but to earn some money. He has a lot of valuable items in his inventory. If he sold them all, it's not impossible for his wallet to recover back to its previous state. But he's not sure if other people can afford them. He's not willing to part with them himself. There are a lot of precious items that other people can't even get their hands on. Their effects are naturally amazing. Wu Yen isn't willing to sell these items that can be put to great use just for a bit of living expenses. It's not like he's at the end of his rope. If he needs money, he could just buy it himself. It's because of this that Wu Yen made such a request to Heathcliff. As the saying goes, if you don't open for 3 days, open for 3 years, and you'll be able to eat for 3 years. It's the same saying when applied to a boss. With the final boss reward, Wu Yen doesn't need to go to the labyrinth area for money anymore. Of course, leveling up and earning money along the way is secondary. As for the hostility from the Clearers, it doesn't matter. Ever since Asuna married him, he's been treated with hostility. He doesn't care about the Clearers anymore. As for Heathcliff, no one knows what he's thinking. Wu Yen left the meeting room with Corrido, leaving Heathcliff and the other 4 members of the Knights of the Blood Oath in the room. They sat there motionlessly. The atmosphere was eerily silent. "Commander," not long after, the voice of one of the higher-ups rang out, breaking the deathly silence. "This final boss battle is very important. We should gather all the top players to increase our chances of winning." "Yeah, Commander." Another member looked at Heathcliff and said, "Aren't we going to call Asuna back?" Heathcliff shook his head without looking back. His eyes were fixed on the only door in the room. "Asuna has left the Knights of the Blood. I announced it to her face. Even if we need her, we can't call her back. Otherwise, the guild's reputation will be ruined. Then we can use the name of invitation," one of the higher-ups suggested. "Just like the Fey Swordsman and the Black Swordsman, we can use the name of the Clearers to invite Asuna, the Flash, to help us. With Asuna's personality, she won't refuse a Clearer's request." Heathcliff glanced at that person and quickly returned to his normal self. Indeed, Asuna might not be working on the game anymore. but she'll definitely come if we invite her. But have you forgotten about the Fey swordsman, Wu Yin? Without waiting for the members to answer, Heathcliff said with a serious face, "Since the Fey swordsman is here and Asuna didn't come with him, it means that Wu Yin doesn't want Asuna to participate in this boss battle. If we invite Asuna, Wu Yin will probably turn against us because of this. Is it that serious?" Heathcliff closed his eyes and spoke with an indescribable emotion. "He's very strong, so strong that even I don't have much confidence in defeating him if he doesn't use his unique skill, dual sword style." The members of the upper echelons fell silent. The duel between Wu Yin and Heathcliff from a year ago was still playing in their minds. That incredible skill, that incredible speed, that terrifying strength, and that incredible battle experience, even after a year, still made their hearts beat faster. Now, the level of the players is a lot higher than a year ago. Among the top players, the lowest level is already at level 80, and their equipment is getting better and better. But at the same time, it's getting harder and harder to level up, and the equipment is getting more and more developed. A year ago, the reason why Wu Yin was so strong was because his level was too high and his equipment was too good. But now, it's getting harder to level up, and the gap between the top players is getting harder and harder to widen. It's the same with equipment, but the Fey swordsman is still able to defeat more than 20 top players in the game. His strength is still as terrifying as ever. That person is both good and evil, and he doesn't have too many scruples. People like him are the hardest to control. It's fine if you don't touch his bottom line, but if you do, he'll become crazier than anyone else." Heathcliff said with a tense face and a hint of helplessness in his tone. "That's why it's best not to do too many things that he doesn't like, or else something might go wrong at a critical moment. He's a solo player, and we're a team. If we really go all out, we'll be the ones who will be restrained. We can't afford to gamble with him." Chapter 726. Aincrad's 75th floor, Corinia, Teleport Gate Plaza. Today, there were close to 50 players wandering around the spacious square. They were in groups of 2s and 3s, chatting about something. However, their faces were filled with worry and seriousness, as if they were soldiers who were about to go to war. These 50 players are the top players in the clearers. They're here to answer Heathcliff's summons and head to the labyrinth area to take down the 75th floor's boss. They more or less know that the boss this time is different from the previous ones. It's going to be a lot stronger. That's why even though the 50 players are chatting, none of them are joking around. The atmosphere is heavy, and there's a thick haze hanging over the plaza. It's a sign of everyone's mood. Maybe they're aware that today is a special day. Everyone here is part of the clearers. Otherwise, there wouldn't be only 50 players here. After all, this is the front line. While there's a lot of danger, there's also a lot of rewards to be gained. That's why a lot of strong players are willing to come here. But today, there's not a single one of them. While everyone is whispering to each other, no one knows if they're discussing the strategy or praying for themselves. Suddenly, a wave of light flashed on the platform. It instantly attracted everyone's attention. The only people who would be here today were those who would be participating in the 75th floor's boss raid. In other words, these people would be their companions. Even if it was for their own safety, they had to know who these people were and whether or not they were worthy of being entrusted with. It was only natural that they would do so, but the next thing they saw was a figure. It's something they didn't expect. When the wave of light dissipated and they saw the newcomers, they were all stunned. The newcomers are Wu Yin and Kirito. The two of them looked around and walked down the portal platform, heading towards a corner at the same time. They were all solo players and didn't fit in with others at all. Naturally, they didn't gather together like the others. If it weren't for the two of them coming together, they might have had to occupy a corner by themselves. When they walked to the corner, the players who were still in a daze reacted as though they had been startled awake. In the next moment, the players who were still in a daze reacted. A scene that was completely different from the previous lifeless atmosphere appeared. Am I seeing things? Was that Wu Yin? Elven swordsman, Wu Yin? That's right. There was absolutely no mistake. A black satin coat. A black greatsword. Although the healing fairy didn't appear, there's another sword on his waist. The only one who would carry two swords is the fairy swordsman, Wu Yin, who has the unique skill dual sword style. The elven swordsman is here too. The strongest player wants to fight the guardian boss with us. Too reliable. Obviously, the appearance of Wu Yin lifted the spirits of the clearers, who were under great pressure. A player who could solo the guardian boss. There was nothing more reliable than such a person. On the other hand, Kirito was dumbfounded by the excitement of the clearers. After a long time, he finally regained his senses and couldn't help but laugh. He glanced at Wu Yin, who was beside him. Did you see that? Those people are so excited about you participating in the guardian boss raid. It's the influence of your title. Wu Yin pouted and turned his head away. What's there to be excited about? When they find out that I'm going to take all the loot, they'll vent their excitement on me. What a bunch of materialistic people. That's not bad. Kirito smiled and said, at least you can boost their morale and make them more courageous. You have to be careful. Don't wait until the end. The guardian boss's last hit was stolen by someone else. Wu Yin raised an eyebrow and looked at Kirito. Don't tell me you want to get involved too? Don't worry. Kirito shrugged. Just when Wu Yin thought Kirito was going to say, I won't steal it from you, Kirito said, if possible, I don't mind slashing the guardian boss when it's low on health. Yo. At this time, a slightly old voice came from beside the two, interrupting their conversation. The two looked towards the source of the voice, and in the next moment, the figures of Keita, Klein, and Agile appeared in their eyes, causing them to smile. You guys are here too? Of course. Klein giggled. We're also clearers and the guild leader of one of the clearers. Of course we're here, but I didn't expect. Suda put his arm around Wu Yan's shoulder and said excitedly, you're here too. It seems like this boss raid is going to be a success. Wu Yan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Suda really thinks highly of me. I might not be the guild leader, but I'm still a clearers. Agile straightened his back. Besides, the guardian boss drops a lot of loot. How can I not come and get some? Oh, then you should be careful. Kirito looked at Agile and pointed at Wu Yin. Yin is also here for the loot. If he kills the guardian boss, he'll take all the loot and you won't get a share. Take all the loot. Agile's body trembled as he looked at Wu Yan's smiling face in shock. How is that possible? Take all the loot. Oh, don't think it's impossible. Kirito smiled. He's not part of the clearers. Heathcliff specifically invited him to help us. Heathcliff has already agreed to keep the loot for himself. You have no choice but to accept it. What? Agile gritted his teeth and shouted angrily. Heathcliff, even if he's the leader of the clearers, what right does he have to make such a decision? What about our interests? Well, who knows? Kirito gloated. Why don't you ask Heathcliff yourself? Agile took a deep breath, and he turned around to look at Wu Yin. The anger on his face turned into flattery at an unimaginable speed. Yin, let's talk. How about you give me some of the guardian boss's loot? I only need a little bit. Wu Yin, Kirito, Agile, and Suda rolled their eyes at the same time. They looked at Agile with disdain. While the five of them were fooling around, Heathcliff arrived with a few elites from the Knights of the Blood. Seeing this scene, everyone shut their mouths, and the whole place became silent. Heathcliff walked to the front of the crowd and took out a cylindrical crystal that was much larger than an ordinary one. This is a cloister crystal. It has the same effect as a teleportation crystal. However, it can be used to teleport people to different locations. Unfortunately, it can only be used once. Otherwise, it would be comparable to the teleportation crystal that Shing got from the quest. Cloister, open. As soon as he finished speaking, the cloister crystal in Heathcliff's hand immediately shattered. In front of Heathcliff, an arc of light that looked like it was teleporting reverberated, and like a tunnel, it froze on the spot. Everyone looked at each other and followed Heathcliff into the tunnel. Their vision blurred, and everyone arrived at a dim passageway. In front of them, there was a tall door. Bang! Heathcliff slammed his shield on the ground and looked at the crowd. Everyone, are you ready? The 50 players nodded in unison. Heathcliff glanced at Wu Yin, who was at the back of the group, before he turned around. Well then, let's begin. The door to the boss slowly opened up before his eyes. Chapter 727. The door, which was large enough to fill a person's field of vision, slowly moved and pushed inwards. The sound of the door opening slowly spread throughout the entire space. All the players present drew their weapons and stared at the door without blinking. Kirito pulled out Shadow Chaser from his back. Suda, Klein, and Agile also aimed their weapons at the door. Only Wu Yin stood there quietly. His hand rested on the hilt of Heaven Gazer. Standing at the front, Heathcliff pulled out his long sword from the inside of his cross shield. When the door to the boss was fully opened, he raised his right hand and shouted, "Let's go. Battle. Begin." "Oh!" everyone shouted at the top of their lungs. They mustered up their courage and followed behind Heathcliff. They rushed into the boss's room with messy footsteps. It's as if they are warriors who will never return. When the last person entered the boss's room was finally exposed to everyone's eyes. It's a spacious room, bigger than the Colosseum in Rome. The floor is circular, the walls are curved, and the walls are curved upwards. Only after reaching an unknown distance in the air did they bend and merge together like an egg with only half of it left. The surroundings were silent and dark. Even the players with the best field of vision could only vaguely see a dozen meters ahead of them. However, there was nothing here other than the ground and walls. The only thing that could be seen were rocks that extended out of nowhere. After everyone entered the room and formed a formation, the boss's door closed with a loud bang. The loud sound of the door closing was like a heavy hammer that hammered the players' hearts. This caused them to become nervous. That was because they knew that when the door opened again, either the boss would be dead or all the players would be dead. Other than that, the door would never open again. Everyone gripped their weapons so tightly that their knuckles were cracking. Everyone's eyes scanned the room, trying to find the boss silhouette. Everyone was looking around the room, trying to find the boss silhouette. However, the boss did not appear even after a long time. The unknown was the most terrifying. In this kind of unknown situation, everyone's nerves were stretched to the limit. At this time, even a small impact was enough to cause a huge reaction. Of course, there was one exception. So, a figure shot out like an arrow from a bow. Suddenly, it shot up into the sky. With an unimaginable leap and astonishing speed, it arrived at the top of the room in the blink of an eye. Before anyone could react, several strange sounds suddenly rang out. Clang, the sound of a sword being drawn. Bang, a muffled sound rang out. Ing, up there. No one knew who it was, but someone let out a loud cry that sounded like he was about to collapse. When it reached everyone's ears, everyone abruptly raised their heads and looked up. With one look, the faces of nearly 50 players paled. Their eyes and faces paled. Traces of horror appeared on their faces. Kirito and the others' pupils also shrunk. What is that thing? Just like before, a hysterical scream rang out. But this time, no one paid attention to that person, because the thing in front of them made their minds go blank. They couldn't react anymore. At the top of the room, a huge monster with a length of more than 10 meters appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Its entire body was made up of bones that were similar to joints, similar to the spine of a human. A pair of sharp bones protruded from each grayish-white bone joint, like the legs of a centipede. As it moved, a bone-chilling sound similar to boiling water could be heard from those legs made of bones. A skull with a face that resembled a human's and a spider's was connected to the front of the spine. The skull was twisted into a streamlined shape, with two pairs of eye sockets hanging up high. The lower jaw protruded forward, revealing sharp fangs. On both sides of the skull, there were huge bone arms that protruded outwards in the shape of sickles. A monster. A real monster. However, at this very moment, the monster's two pairs of eyes and four eye sockets were emitting a dense blood-red light. Along with the strange, insect-like hiss from before, the sound reverberated throughout the entire space. At the center of its huge body, a person was holding a large black sword, which was stabbed into its skeleton. That person, it's Wu Yan. Yan, Suda, Klein, and Agile were stunned. He jumped up and attacked. Kirito forced a smile, but cold sweat dripped down his forehead. How reckless must he be to do something like that? What a terrifying jumping ability. Heathcliff gritted his teeth, turned around, and shouted at everyone. His voice seemed to freeze over. "Don't gather together. Get out of my way." Just as he finished speaking, the centipede, made of bones, under the gaze of everyone's pale faces, wriggled its countless bony legs and extended outwards. Then it fell downwards. "Quick, spread out." As Heathcliff roared, the players who had finally regained their senses quickly scattered in fear. Those who didn't manage to disperse in time were still staring blankly at the sky, as if they had lost their minds. Wu Yin cursed in his heart. He used the heaven gazer embedded in the monster's bones to support himself and fell down with it. But because Wu Yin jumped up to attack, his body is now below the boss. In other words, if the boss falls to the ground, he'll be squashed into a meat pie. Those idiots! Wu Yin looked at the players who still didn't know how to disperse. He pulled out the heaven gazer from the monster's body and slammed it into the monster's body. With the momentum of the impact, Wu Yin flew backward. Boom! With a loud bang, the giant skeletal body of the boss crashed to the ground, stirring up a wave of dust that swept in all directions. Perhaps it was angered, because the boss raised its giant skeletal jaws and roared. The roar jolted the players back to their senses. Their faces were filled with fear as they stared at the boss in front of them. Before they could even turn around, the boss's 4 blood-red eyes were fixed on them. The pair of scythe-like bone blades in front of its body slashed through the players' bodies in an instant. Amidst the screams, a red light flashed in the middle of the players' bodies, indicating that they were wounded. Following that, their HP bars, which were originally full, began to drop at an incredible rate. They dropped to yellow, then to red, until they hit rock bottom and shattered into pieces. Fear, and shock filled every player's face. One hit. Klein stared blankly at the giant boss. Just one hit. Are you kidding me? Kirito bit his lip so hard that it almost bled. He couldn't believe it. No one here wanted to believe it. Everyone here is one of the best players in SAO. Be it level or equipment, they're the top of the game. But under such circumstances, even with full HP, he couldn't even take a single hit from the boss. Terrifying. How terrifying. Ahaha. Wu Yan's lips curled into a grin as a drop of sweat trickled down the side of his face. Looks like I can't be careless. Chapter 728. The boss raised its head and hissed. A shockwave of fire rippled out from under its countless bony feet. Wherever it passed, the floors seemed to be on fire. The originally dark and cold floor instantly turned fiery red. It only stopped when the entire boss room was lit up. The dark environment suddenly brightened up. This was a good thing for the players whose vision was limited. However, none of the players felt happy at all. The fiery red environment around them could not dispel the coldness in their hearts. Only sweat dripped down from their bodies as if they were being roasted. Spread out. Spread out. Heathcliff's voice was still echoing in the air. The situation in front of them was obviously very dangerous, but there was an indescribable calmness in his voice. The players around him began to calm down a little, and they began to disperse in an orderly manner. However, there were still 2 or 3 players who were panicking and running around aimlessly. Many people frowned and broke out in cold sweat for them. Yen. Kirito yelled at Wu Yen. Wu Yen turned around and nodded as if he understood what Kirito was trying to do. The 2 of them dashed towards the boss made of skeletons. Seeing Wu Yen and Kirito rushing toward it, the boss let out a roar. The boss seemed to recognize Wu Yen as the one who just slashed it. Its eyes flashed red. Its gigantic body was propelled by its centipede-like bony legs as it charged forward. Boom! The next moment, the 2 sides collided violently. The spectators could vaguely see that before the 2 sides collided, the boss had swung its pair of bone scythes. Following that, a loud bang rang out, and the 2 figures were sent flying backward after the loud bang. Damn it! Wu Yan's hands were a little numb from the impact. He clenched his teeth and flipped in the air to stabilize himself. Kirito, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. He crashed into the ground and lost a little bit of his HP. His wine-red eyes stared straight at the boss in front of him. Wu Yan's expression was very serious. The Heaven Gazer, sword in his hand, was still trembling. One could imagine how terrifying the boss's strength was in that short clash. Wu Yan is a player who put all his points into strength. Strength represents strength and attack. But even so, he was still sent flying in a single clash. Of course, Wu Yan wasn't surprised. The 74th floor boss's strength was already a little higher than his, and the 75th floor boss is a super boss that appears once every 25 floors. It's not hard to predict that the boss's strength will surpass his. Besides, Wu Yan didn't think he could kill a top clearers in a single hit. Yet the boss managed to do it. Strength. Attack. It's terrifying, but that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is, as the boss charged at the surrounding players, it relied on its enormous body to ram into them. Its bony feet were like tires, and its speed was incomparably outstanding. In addition to its frightening attack power, the boss was like a charging train. Let alone attack, they couldn't even get close to the boss. Even its speed is amazing. Wu Yan narrowed his eyes and stood up. He swung the Heaven Gazer in the air and pointed it at the ground. His other hand slowly rested on the hilt of the elucidator. Kirito, Wu Yan said to Kirito without looking back. I'll tank it from the front. You take Klein and the others and attack it from the side. You alone? Kirito looked at Wu Yan in surprise. Are you sure? It's not that Kirito doesn't believe in Wu Yan's strength. It's just that the boss this time is too terrifying. It can kill a top clearers in one hit, and that's enough to make everyone tremble. Wu Yan chuckled and slowly pulled out the elucidator and pointed it at the ground with the Heaven Gazer. I'm going to go all out. What do you think? Kirito's expression froze when he heard Wu Yan's words. He sighed in relief when he saw Wu Yan wielding two swords. He turned to look at the boss. Don't die. Wu Yan shook the Heaven Gazer and the elucidator. The two black one-handed swords shone with the light of sword skill. If you guys weren't here, I would have charged in already. A small fairy appeared out of thin air beside Wu Yan. It circled around Wu Yan and landed on his shoulder. When Wu Yan felt a slight weight on his shoulder, he immediately dashed forward. His body turned into a ray of black light and appeared in front of the boss. Huh! Amidst the violent roar, the Heaven Gazer flashed with light. With a rise and fall, it suddenly chopped down. Clang! Heaven Gazer landed on the giant skull of the boss. It made a crisp sound as if it had hit steel. The boss howled in pain. Its eyes were bloodshot. It raised its bone scythe and chopped down at Wu Yan. Clang! Another crisp sound rang out. This time, it wasn't the sound of a hit. It was the sound of a block. Oomph! Wu Yan grunted and blocked the boss's bone scythe with his sword. Sparks flew everywhere when the two weapons collided. The force of the collision was so great that it kept moving towards Wu Yan's head. If it wasn't for the infinite martial arts skill, the scythe would have cut through Wu Yan's body. The force was too strong. Oomph! Seeing Wu Yan block its bone scythe with a small sword, the boss was furious. It raised its other scythe and slashed at Wu Yan from the other side. Wu Yan clenched his teeth as he sensed the wind coming at him. He grabbed a elucidator with a backhand grip and used it to guard his side. The boss used its bone scythe to chop down on the blade that is even smaller than the bone scythe and the Heaven Gazer. Clang! Amidst the violent collisions, Wu Yan grunted again. His hands trembled incessantly. The force coming from both sides of his body made him feel like he was suffocating. The boss was like a biscuit. Its two bone scythes were clamping down on Wu Yan. Wu Yan held his two swords and pushed the scythes away with all his might. In an instant, the two blades clashed and sparks flew everywhere. Wu Yan raised his head with difficulty. A vein popped out on his forehead. He looked at the boss that was roaring at him and exerting more force. A hint of viciousness flashed in his wine-red eyes. Huh! The two swords flashed and illuminated the faces of Wu Yan and the boss. With a roar, the Heaven Gazer and the elucidator stopped trembling. Then, Wu Yan waved his swords and pushed them to the side. Instantly, The two bone sides were pushed to the back of the boss. The boss lost its balance, and its huge body was pushed backwards. It took a lot of effort to stabilize itself, and in its four blood-red eye sockets, two long swords, one big and one small, flashing with the light of sword skills, pierced into two of its eye sockets. Bang! Ing! The boss, who had just managed to stabilize itself, couldn't help but topple over like a tortoise. Its huge body flew through the air before crashing to the ground with a loud thud. Along with its 5 full HP bars, the green area at the top of the HP bar had dropped a little. Chapter 729. As the giant body of the boss fell to the ground started to tremble as if there was an earthquake, causing the minds of the players who were still in a daze to go blank. Looking at Wu Yin, who was still in the same posture of pushing out his swords, the players couldn't help but gasp for air. Their eyes flashed with disbelief. A level boss that could kill a top player with a single hit had actually lost to a player in a head-on clash. Thinking of this, the players felt like they were in a dream. What they didn't know was that Wu Yin was also having a hard time. When he lost to the boss in a head-on clash, Wu Yin could still use the excuse that he didn't use his dual sword style. After all, equipped with a powerful weapon like Elucidator, the attributes of the weapon are not to be trifled with. In terms of attack power, with the addition of Elucidator's attack power, Wu Yan's already strong attack power was boosted to the max. Even under such circumstances, he can only barely beat the boss in a stalemate. He's also tired himself out like a dead dog. Wu Yin knew that if he had to fight the boss a second time, he wouldn't have any extra burst power to kill the boss. That's why he chose to attack the boss's eyes to buy himself some time. Everyone, attack! The shrewd Heathcliff naturally wouldn't let go of such an opportunity. Seeing that the boss was in a state similar to paralysis, he decisively activated the charge horn and led a group of clearers to the front of the boss. One after another, the clearers swung their weapons at the boss. The guardian boss raised its head and roared. The huge mouth on its ferocious skull opened, and a dense energy wave condensed together. In just a moment, it turned into a sound wave. The terrifying roar directly caused the surrounding space to fluctuate. The roar made everyone's ears feel uncomfortable, and the attacks in their hands also slowed down. With this pause, the guardian boss also moved. Chi! The ferocious skull swung, and with a chi sound, a bone sickle flashing with a cold light cut through the sky, like a flash of lightning, and swept violently towards the surroundings. Be careful! Kirito, who was about to use his sword skill again, had a serious expression on his face when he saw the bone scythe that could definitely kill the Grim Reaper. He retreated without hesitation. The attack power of the boss was extremely high. Only Wu Yin, who had the unique skill dual sword style, and Heathcliff, who had the sacred sword skill, could withstand it. Other than them, no matter who got hit by the boss, they wouldn't fare any better than the clearers who got chopped in half. Kirito didn't need to remind everyone of the danger of the bone scythe. Everyone except Wu Yin and Heathcliff quickly scattered. Fortunately, the level boss was on its back. Although the bone scythe had extremely terrifying killing power, it felt like it was shooting a fly with a cannon. Because it was difficult to control its posture, this attack cut through space, but it only cut through the air and didn't hit anyone. Yin Kun. Heathcliff came to Wu Yan's side, raised his cross shield, and said in a deep voice, "We'll block it. Let the others attack." Wu Yan nodded helplessly. The 75th floor's guardian boss is a tough nut to crack. He used his full strength, but he still couldn't do anything to it. Wu Yan didn't think he would lose in a one-on-one fight. This guardian boss is a super strong existence that only appears once every 25 floors. However, he has the support of a healing fairy, so he might be able to beat it if he goes all out. However, since Heathcliff had decided to gang up on him, there was no need for him to fight a boss that was not any weaker than him. That was why he did not have to fight a boss that was not any weaker than him. At this time, the boss finally turned over from the ground and looked down at Wu Yin and Heathcliff, who were closest to it. "Do it!" Heathcliff shouted. Wu Yin nodded slightly. Together with Heathcliff, they rushed towards the boss in front of them. Staring at the bone scythe that was swinging towards them, Wu Yin and Heathcliff swung their black swords and a cross shield at the boss instead of retreating. Bang bang, clang, boom, yee, let's go. Each person's attack was like a tickle to the boss. However, once the number of such attacks increased, even the boss could not ignore them. Roar. The boss roared angrily as its HP decreased. Its bone sides were blocked by Wu Yin and Heathcliff. It swung its bone tail, and it turned into a black shadow as it lashed out at the surrounding players. Wu Yan's eyes narrowed when he saw this. He changed his hand motions, and Heaven Gazer and Elucidator flashed with golden light. They streaked across the air like streaks of lightning, and before the bone tail could hit the players, they landed in the eye sockets of the boss. The boss groaned, and it stopped waving its bone tail. Kirito and the others couldn't help but be overjoyed. They didn't hesitate and continued to attack the boss. A new round of attacks was launched, causing smoke and dust to rise from the boss's body. Under the double suppression of Wu Yin, Heathcliff, and the players around it, the boss couldn't even move for a while. It could only twist its body, causing the ground to shake, but it couldn't stop its HP from decreasing. Bang! A silver light flashed and appeared above the boss's head. The dazzling black sword slashed down and landed squarely on the boss's head. If Heathcliff, who has the divine sword, has the strongest defense among all of SAO, then Wu Yin, who has the dual sword style, has the highest attack power and attack speed in SAO. Now that both of his swords landed on the boss, even if the boss has 5 HP bars, it still lost a lot of damage. Although the damage it received wasn't as much as the combined damage of all the players around it, it wasn't far off. Bang, 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 bang. The sounds of attacks were still ringing, proving that Kirito and the others are still attacking the boss's body. Heathcliff was focused on blocking the boss's bone sides with his shield, and Wu Yin was doing the same. He could still hold his ground against the boss's bone size with 2 weapons, let alone Heathcliff. Therefore, while blocking the boss's bone sides, Wu Yin also took the time to attack the boss's skull and 4 eye sockets. Each strike was more vicious than the last, and the sound of his strikes was like a thunderstorm. The players around him felt like their hearts were being squeezed. The boss's HP was already reduced by half. Chapter 730. Bang, 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 bang. Sounds of explosions, roars, shouts, and gusts of wind. These sounds echoed throughout the boss room, telling everyone just how intense the battle here was. Kirito and the others kept attacking, and Wu Yin kept attacking from time to time. Even though the boss has a lot of HP, it couldn't last for more than half an hour. Its HP bar dropped to yellow, and after a while, it finally reached red alert. Meanwhile, the surrounding players had no time to pay attention to the boss's HP bar. The pressure this boss gave them was undeniably immense. Under such pressure, they had no choice but to attack, attack, and attack. The sooner they finished off this boss, the sooner they could finish off this raid. In order to prevent any accidents from happening and to prevent any more sacrifices from being made, their eyes were bloodshot. Their minds were filled with nothing but attack. They had probably forgotten to dodge when the boss attacked them. Of course, it's not that they're idiots who don't know how to save their own lives. It's just that they saw how every time the boss attacked, Wu Yin, who was tanking the boss bone scythe, would find the time to use a sword skill to strike the boss skull or eye socket, interrupting the boss attack. Because of this, they would be able to forget about dodging and focus wholeheartedly on attacking. That's why they didn't realize that they have unknowingly given their lives to Wu Yin. If Wu Yin makes a mistake, they might die. But they still chose to believe in Wu Yin. They believe in the strongest player in SO, the legendary player who could take on the final boss by himself. Unlike the other players, Kirito, Suda, Klein, and Agile have always believed in Wu Yin. That's why they're the ones who did the most damage to the boss. Other than Wu Yin, they're the only ones who did the most damage to the boss. The 4 of them did the most damage to the boss. The boss opened its 4 blood-red eye sockets, as if it knows that it's about to disappear. There's a tinge of fear in its shriek. Faced with Wu Yin and Heathcliff stalling, it became more and more frenzied. It swung its bone scythes even more intensely in an attempt to cut down the two culprits responsible for its current predicament. Wu Yan and Heathcliff didn't let their guard down at all. They didn't give the boss a chance to breathe. They knew that when facing a boss of this level, the slightest mistake will cause all their efforts to go to waste or even death. At this moment, if there's any more casualties, it's not worth it. Therefore, even though Wu Yan's attention was focused on the boss's bone scythe, he didn't stop attacking. The Heaven Gazer and the Elucidator would unleash their sword skills and slash at the boss's skull. Even Heathcliff was starting to take the time to attack. After receiving so many sword skills from Wu Yan, no matter how strong the boss is, it couldn't hold on any longer. Its huge head was swaying left and right, and even the blood-red light in its eyes dimmed a little. One can imagine how deadly Wu Yan's attacks are to the boss. Indeed, without Wu Yan, it would take at least an hour for these players to kill the boss. It was the same in the original work. But now, with the addition of Wu Yan, the boss HP bar was almost empty in less than half an hour. And at some point, the 5 long HP bars were finally down to the last bit. Wu Yan's eyes flashed. With a wave of his hand, the healing fairy immediately healed him back to full health. Then, with a shake of his hands, 2 black swords of different sizes suddenly burst out with a dazzling light. Gathering all his strength, he leaped up. Wu Yan dodged the bone scythe and stepped on the back of the bone scythe. Borrowing the momentum, Wu Yan's figure shot towards the boss's face. Then, the 2 swords glowing with the light of the stars came crashing down. Bang! The terrifying blow, mixed with the sound of an explosion, mercilessly landed between the boss's eyebrows. With a bang, the boss's huge skull exploded into pieces. Only a red code mark was left on the front of the boss's spine. Following the explosion of the boss's head, its gigantic body abruptly froze on the spot. Its wriggling bony feet seemed to have been tied up by something. It froze on the spot, unable to move an inch. Kirito, Sutta, Klein, Agile, and the surrounding players were all stunned. Heathcliff narrowed his eyes and put down the crossed shield in his hand. Everyone's eyes turned towards Wu Yan, who was slowly descending from the sky and landing with 1 foot on the ground. For a long time, no one spoke. Bang! The sound of glass shattering could be heard. Every player trembled as they regained their senses. The first thing they saw was the giant boss's body shattering into pieces and scattering in all directions. Following that, the fiery red glow around the area gradually dimmed. The bright room was plunged into darkness. Above the room, the English words that signified the completion of the dungeon flashed. Accompanied by the sound effect, the words hung above everyone's head, dispelling the tension in the players' hearts. It had been half an hour since they stepped into the boss's room, and the boss was finally defeated. The 75th floor. They cleared the floor. The door to the boss's room opened in an instant, exposing the path outside to everyone's eyes. When they entered this room, they already knew that unless the boss died or they all died, the door to the room wouldn't open. Now that the door to the boss's room had been opened and they had survived, there could only be one conclusion. The boss had been killed. All of this was real. It's over. Kirito stared blankly at the mark above his head and muttered softly. It was like a chemical reaction that triggered everyone's reaction. It's over. Yes, it's over. We cleared the floor. We cleared the floor. The players desperately resisted the urge to cheer because they no longer had any strength left. The exhaustion came from the bottom of their hearts. When they put down their weapons, they collapsed to the ground. Their mouths were constantly gasping for breath. On their faces, there were already traces of tears. That's the joy of surviving a disaster. However, this joy was quickly extinguished by the sound of a voice. How many died? The entire place suddenly became quiet. No one made a sound. The people who were panting violently just a moment ago all shut their mouths. They didn't dare to make any noise. They were all listening attentively. That heavy number. For I don't know who it was, but someone slowly said this sentence. 3 people died when the boss first appeared. There was another person who fought and ran away while attacking the boss. He was killed by the boss in 1 hit. Wu Yin, Kirito, Suda, Klein, Agile, and everyone else went silent. Chapter 731. For people died. Compared to the number of people who died in the original game, this number is nothing short of a miracle. Of course, the players lying paralyzed on the floor of the boss room didn't know the plot of the original novel. They also didn't know that in the original novel, more than twice the number of them would follow the 4 dead players to the underworld. However, this didn't prevent them from feeling disappointed. They all knew that when they were fighting the boss had a lot of opportunities to attack them and kill them. But because of Wu Yin, the boss attacks were interrupted. That's why they forgot about everything and focused on attacking. In other words, if it wasn't for Wu Yin's help, more than 4 of them would have died. That's why they didn't know about the original plot, but they knew what happened just now. If it wasn't for Wu Yin, they might have died in the boss' hands. Their hearts felt cold. Is it really possible for us to completely conquer this game? Everyone couldn't help but have this question in their minds. Only Kirito, Suda, Klein, and Agile had the same question in their minds. They looked at Wu Yin, who was not far away from them. When they saw him wielding his twin swords with a calm expression on his face, all the doubts and coldness in their hearts disappeared in an instant. Only determination remained in their hearts. Wu Yin played a bigger role in this boss battle than anyone else. If it wasn't for him and Heathcliff blocking the boss attacks, they would have died. If it wasn't for Wu Yin interrupting the boss attacks and attracting the boss aggro, they would have lost more people. If Wu Yin can participate in every floor's boss fight in the future, then the complete raid will be a success. They could do it. Kirito, Suda, Klein, and Agile's hearts were set on fire. That's the fire of hope. It's their hope to clear SAO. On the other hand, Wu Yin sighed in relief when he saw how well Kirito and the others are doing. He couldn't help but grin when he saw Kirito taking care of the clears. The grin on his face widened even further. Don't forget, the reason why Wu Yin came to this world is because he summoned Yukari in advance. That's why the quest is mandatory. Mandatory quest: clear the game. Mission: enter the world of swords and sabers. Enter the world of SAO and clear all 100 floors of Aincrad. Quest requirement: during the quest, the user is not allowed to use any abilities, equipment, or items. The user is not allowed to bring other characters into the Sword and Saber Dominion world. Wu Yin has to clear all 100 floors of Aincrad. This means that he can't let Kirito discover Heathcliff's true identity like what happened in the original work. In the original work, when Kirito found out that Heathcliff was Kaiba Akihiko, the boss of the 75th floor was killed, and they cleared the 75th floor, which was now. If Kirito finds out about Heathcliff's identity, Wu Yin's quest will fail by half. Who knows if someone else will jump out and take a hit for Kirito? That way, Kirito would be able to kill Heathcliff and clear SAO. Even if Kirito can't beat Heathcliff now that he no longer has dual swords, it's still the same for Kirito, because Wu Yin won't let Kirito die in Heathcliff's hands. In order to save Kirito, a battle with Heathcliff would be unavoidable. It's possible that he will fail by half, or even lose the whole game. At that time, if he fails the quest, he will be taken out of this world by the system and sent to the next dungeon. What about Asuna? What about Yui? If he leaves this world, time will stop, and the next time he enters this world will be the same. But Wu Yin doesn't want that to happen. He promised Asuna that he will go back to this world. Even if Asuna doesn't feel anything, he will feel a thorn in his heart. Fortunately, Kirito didn't find out Heathcliff's true identity. In the original work, Kirito was able to discover Heathcliff's true identity because he had a duel with Heathcliff. He discovered that Heathcliff had broken through the system's restrictions and obtained assistance. But now, without the dual sword school and Asuna, Kirito and Heathcliff had lost a lot of contact, so naturally, there was no duel between them. That's how Heathcliff's true identity is hidden. Wu Yin could only apologize to Kirito and the others for not being able to leave this world early. He then glanced at Heathcliff and opened his personal interface to check his loot. Heathcliff also glanced at Wu Yin before he turned around and told the other players that Wu Yin got the loot alone. This made Kirito, Suda, Klein, and Agile nervous. They were worried that these players would be hostile to Wu Yin. After going through so much trouble and risking their lives to kill the final boss, they didn't even get any loot. People's hearts were very narrow-minded. Under such circumstances, it was natural for them to be hostile towards each other. But what surprised Kirito and the others, and even Heathcliff, was that after hearing this, the players around them all nodded in agreement without any objections. Could it be that these people were really so magnanimous? They didn't know that the players around them were grateful to Wu Yin for repeatedly interrupting the boss attacks and saving their lives. That's why they didn't care about the loot. This was quite unexpected. Kirito, Suda, Klein, and Agile looked at each other. They didn't know what was going on, but they sighed in relief. No matter what, it's a good thing. Commander Heathcliff. Kirito looked at Heathcliff and said, "Activate the portal." Heathcliff nodded and walked forward. Wu Yin walked over and waved at them. "Well then, I'll be heading back. Already?" Kirito and the others were stunned for a moment before they quickly said, "There might be a celebration later. Don't you want to stay?" "No thanks. No thanks." Wu Yin smiled faintly. "Someone died, and we don't know if there's going to be a celebration or not. Asuna is waiting for me." "I see." Kirito shook his head helplessly. "Then there's nothing I can do, Yin Kun." Heathcliff suddenly looked up and said, "I hope you'll be able to help me next time." Wu Yin glanced at him and walked out of the room. "I won't go back on my word, Aincrad, 22nd floor. Mommy," Yui asked for the umpteenth time in Asuna's arms. "When is Daddy coming back?" "Daddy," Asuna forced a smile. "Soon." As soon as she said that, someone knocked on the door. Asuna's body trembled, and she jumped up from the sofa. She put down Yui and rushed to the door. "Please, it has to be him." With this prayer in mind, Asuna opened the door as fast as she could. The next moment, a familiar figure came into her sight, causing her to cover her mouth with her hands. Tears instantly flowed down her cheeks. "Asuna." Wu Yin tilted his head and smiled. "I'm back." Asuna silently covered her mouth as tears flowed down her cheeks. After a while, the most beautiful smile of her life blossomed on her face. "Welcome back." Chapter 732. Today was the best day in Aincrad so far. Just like how there are 4 seasons in the real world, there are also seasons in SAO. But unlike the real world, the seasons in the real world can change at will without anyone's consent. Perhaps the environment around you will change to a different season without you noticing. However, SAO is different. As a game world, everything in this world is set according to the initial settings. The same goes for the seasons. It will change when the weather is good, and when the weather is bad. These are all set according to the settings. Today, even the floors that were covered in ice and snow would have a brief moment of sunlight and blue sky. The floors that were originally very beautiful seemed to be covered in a layer of honey today, causing the air to carry a sweet fragrance. A gentle breeze would occasionally blow by, causing one's mood to lighten up. Aincrad, 22nd floor, in front of a lake. Wu Yin is sitting in a corner by the lake. He's wearing casual clothes and holding a fishing rod. He's yawning while looking at the beautiful lake with sleepy eyes. There's a buoy there that's gently moving up and down. He's fishing. Fishing is an activity that requires a lot of patience and concentration. However, Wu Yin, who is fishing here, didn't satisfy any of their requests. He continued to yawn as he pleased. When he's free, he would look at the boom in his hand and the buoys on the lake. It's as if he's here for entertainment. Today is the best day in Aincrad setting. Wu Yin can't say for sure that he's going to have a hard time with this kind of weather. There's nothing better than sleeping in. Yet, he came here to fish. He believes that if any fishing expert were to come and see him like this, they would look down on him in the dark or even on the surface. If he can catch fish like this, then the price of the fish wouldn't be so expensive. Unfortunately, the person who said this is, if you get close to him, you'll see a barrel full of fishes swimming in it. The barrel is so full that it's almost overflowing with water. At the very least, it's about to overflow. There are more than a dozen of them, and all of them are fat and healthy. Everyone's jaws drop to the ground. After a while, Wu Yin lazily waited for another fish to take the bait. Wu Yin quickly lifted the fish and threw it on top of the barrel. Wu Yin muttered while looking at the barrel full of fish. This should be enough, right? After saying that, Wu Yin put away the fishing rod, lifted the barrel, and tapped on it a few times. The fish in the barrel immediately flashed and disappeared into Wu Yan's inventory. After doing this, Wu Yin shook the barrel in his hand and walked back home. Let's hook more tomorrow. When he said this, he might as well put a pillow over his face to show how lazy he is when he said this. But Wu Yin himself didn't doubt it, because in this 1 year, he had already mastered all of his fishing skill proficiency. That's right. It's been a year. It's been a year since the 75th floor boss was defeated. Too many things happen in a year, so many that even Wu Yin, who is still standing at the top of the game, didn't know about some of the things that happened. After all, in his life, other than leveling up in the labyrinth area, he spent most of his time at home with his wife and children, living a quiet life. Wu Yin and Asuna didn't know much about the things that happened in SAO. Of course, they didn't know about the things that happened in SAO. Of course, the things that they didn't know about are insignificant and trivial. They can still find out about the important things from the newspaper. For example, the clearer's progress, the information about the floors that they cleared, and the heavy losses that Divine Dragon Alliance suffered after the army. This incident had happened over a year ago. Not long after the boss of the 75th floor was killed and the 75th floor was cleared, the Divine Dragon Alliance found the boss room in the labyrinth area of the 76th floor. The guild leader of the Divine Dragon Alliance did not inform the clearers about his guild's discovery of the floor boss's room. Instead, he led half of the Divine Dragon Alliance's elite members into the 76th floor boss's room. Previously, after clearing the 25th and 50th floors, the clearers noticed that the bosses on the 26th and 51st floors were very weak, at least much weaker than the bosses on the 25th and 50th floors. However, the rewards for killing the bosses on the 26th and 51st floors were much better than the bosses on the 25th and 50th floors. Although the rewards were not as good as the bosses on the 25th and 50th floors, they were still much better than the average bosses on the 25th and 50th floors. Therefore, the clearers speculated that after the boss on the 25th floor was killed, the bosses on the next floor would be much weaker, but the rewards would be much higher. It's a benefit for the clearers who work hard to kill the boss. Because of this speculation, the guild leader of Divine Dragon Alliance started to have an idea. Driven by greed, he led a group of Divine Dragon Alliance's elites to challenge the boss, and the result was self-evident. The 76th floor's boss was indeed much weaker than the 75th floor's boss. In fact, it was even slightly weaker than the 74th floor's boss. However, it was only by a small margin. It was definitely not something a single guild could deal with. If the Divine Dragon's Alliance charged in recklessly, would there be a good outcome? They weren't as lucky as the army who happened to run into Wu Yin, who was leveling up with Asuna. No one was there to save them, including their guild leader, and all of them died in the boss room. The Divine Dragon Alliance suffered heavy losses, and after the army, they left the clearers' front line. As of now, the clearers are only left with Knights of the Blood, Moonlit Black Cats, and Furin Kazan. The clearers' strength suffered a huge blow, and they were even weaker when they tried to clear the boss on the 76th floor. In the end, it was Wu Yin who stepped in and killed the boss on the 76th floor, giving the clearers a chance to reach the 77th floor, which gave the clearers time to develop. Needless to say, the three great guilds were quite capable. The clearers, who were originally lacking in combat strength, developed rapidly after clearing the 76th floor. As a result, Knights of the Blood, Moonlit Black Cats, and Furin Kazan also experienced a period of rapid development. This also led to the subsequent clearing of the 77th floor, 78th floor, and 79th floor without Wu Yan's help. Since then, the clearers didn't need Wu Yan's help anymore, and Heathcliff didn't invite Wu Yin to join the clearers. And so, Wu Yin and the clearers resumed their relationship. Competition. In other words, whoever finds the boss room first will be able to clear that floor, just like before. It's not hard to imagine how much the clearers have improved. Even though they lost the guild, they still managed to clear the floor. Of course, Wu Yan's strength shouldn't be underestimated, since he was able to clear the floor alone. Asuna, who was inseparable from Wu Yan, also learned a lot of skills from him and became much stronger. Under such circumstances, Aincrad's progress has reached a level that all the clearers are excited about. The 98th floor. Chapter 733. Today was the best day of the year in Aincrad. There seemed to be something else in the forest. Strange sounds of birds, beasts, and insects could be heard from every corner of the forest, making the already good environment even livelier. Coupled with the clear sky and the gentle breeze, it was a great day to go for an outing. Deep in the forest, inside a wooden mansion, Asuna is sitting on the sofa in casual clothes. She's sewing a piece of clothing that's starting to take shape. Judging by her nimble movements, she must have gotten a lot more proficient in her tailoring skills. She seems to be enjoying herself as well. She has a smile on her face that can topple a city. After a year, Asuna had changed a lot. Although the 18-year-old Asuna was a little taller, her chestnut-colored hair was a little longer, and her figure was a little more curvy. However, she exuded a mature, gentle temperament. Compared to a year ago, her charm had increased by a lot. He believed that if Asuna went out again, she would definitely attract more fans. Her old fans might even go crazy for her. Unfortunately, Asuna didn't have the chance to do so. Since quitting the Knights of the Blood, Asuna hasn't been seen in public since. In other words, aside from Kirito, Liz, Sachi, Cheyenne, and Silica, who drop by from time to time, no one else is lucky enough to witness Asuna's transformation. But it's a big mistake to think that Asuna only changed her appearance and temperament. Asuna likes to live a peaceful life, but she's also a person who doesn't like to admit defeat. Even though she's no longer a member of Knights of the Blood, she didn't fall behind in level. Every night, after Yui goes to bed, Wu Yin and Asuna would go to the labyrinth area to level up. Asuna would even go with Wu Yin when they found the boss room. Plus, Wu Yin would teach her some combat skills from time to time. Asuna's level, equipment, and actual strength are all the same. None of them were weaker than Kirito. In fact, they were showing signs of surpassing him. In the past year, Kirito's strength increased day by day. It can be said that Kirito is now one of the top 3 players in SAO. Other than Wu Yin and Heathcliff, no one dared to say that they were stronger than Kirito, but Wu Yin dared to say that Asuna was stronger than him. One could imagine Asuna's current strength. It was also not to be underestimated. It was just that no one knew about it. Except for Wu Yin, everyone's impression of Asuna was still the same as a year ago. Asuna was considered a reclusive powerhouse. Unlike Asuna, who has obviously changed, Yui's change is as good as nothing. Her long black hair reached her waist, and her bangs were flat. Even her height was still the same. The only difference was that the pure white dress had been replaced with an ordinary shirt and pleated skirt. It made Yui look a little more lively and cute. However, if one were to look closely, they would notice that although Yui still looked innocent on the surface, there was a different kind of light in her pure eyes. At this time, Yui was lying on the sofa with her hands supporting her cheeks. She tilted her head and looked at Asuna, who was sewing clothes. She couldn't help but ask, "Mom, are you sewing clothes for yourself?" It's no wonder Yui asked this question. At home, Wu Yin and Yui's clothes were made by Asuna, but aside from Asuna, one of them is a boy and the other is a child. Asuna's clothes are obviously for women, and the style isn't a child size. Asuna is the only one who can wear it. Asuna smiled softly and didn't slow down her sewing. "No, this is a gift for your Aunt Liz." Hearing this, Yui nodded in relief and wrinkled her nose. "Can you make it in time?" "It's done," Asuna said as she sewed the last stitch. The next moment, a youthful and beautiful piece of clothing appeared in Asuna's hand, and she held it up. "It's done. We just need to wait for your daddy to come back, and we can go." "Can we go now?" Yui's eyes lit up. She suddenly sat up from the sofa and jumped to the ground. She couldn't wait to say, "Dad, come back quickly." Wu Yin opened the door and heard Yui's words. He smiled and shook his head. "There's still some time before we start. I'm not too late, right?" "Daddy." Yui turned around and looked at the door. When she saw Wu Yin, her small face beamed with joy. She ran to his side and hugged Wu Yan's arm. "Daddy, you're too slow. Uncle Carito and Aunt Liz might get angry. I'm not as stingy as you are." Wu Yin pinched Yui's nose, causing her to beg for mercy. Asuna stood up and walked to Wu Yin. She helped him fix his clothes and asked gently, "How's the harvest?" "Well, I got a few good ones. They're not as good as S-grade ingredients, but they're still very precious." Wu Yin put down the bucket in his other hand. "With Kirito's gluttonous personality, I don't think there's anything better than this." "Don't say that." Asuna patted Wu Yan's shoulder. He didn't know why she was blaming him, but her intimate action made Wu Yin very happy. "How's your side?" Wu Yin looked at the pretty dress in Asuna's hand. He praised her. "Not bad. Other than jewelry, clothes are a girl's favorite thing to wear." Wu Yin rubbed his chin as if he was thinking of something. "But Liz looks like a tomboy. She probably likes weapons more than clothes, right?" Asuna rolled her eyes. She clicked on an item on the clothes and stored it in her inventory. Then she took a few steps back. "Well then, I'll go change first." Wu Yin subconsciously glanced at Asuna, who was wearing a spaghetti-strap dress that exposed her white shoulders, arms, and legs. He looked at her body that's becoming more and more attractive by the day and gulped. He cursed in his heart and turned his head away. He didn't want to get aroused. "Daddy, Daddy." Yui tugged at Wu Yan's sleeve and said with wide eyes, "Aren't you going to cook those fish? Uncle Carito will definitely like Daddy's cooking more than the ingredients." Wu Yan pursed his lips and rubbed Yui's head. "Yui, you should know that when your mother and I got married, Uncle Carito didn't even give us a single core. Now that he's married to Aunt Liz, we should be grateful that we're able to give him a present." That's right. After a year, Carito and Liz's relationship finally came to fruition. Maybe it's because they've reached the 98th floor and SAO is about to end. Carito and Liz felt that would be a pity if they don't get married in their last moments in this world. A while ago, they suddenly announced that they're getting married, which caught everyone off guard. They didn't even have time to prepare a present. That's why Wu Yin gave them food and Asuna gave them clothes. When Daddy and Mommy got married, Yui clasped her hands together and her eyes sparkled. "I wonder what Daddy and Mommy looked like when they got married. I really want to see it." Wu Yin blinked and chuckled. "I'll tell you when I have time." "Okay." While they were talking, Asuna also came out of her room. She was wearing a white dress and a small jacket, and she walked in front of the two. "Okay, let's go." Chapter 734. Aincrad, 59th floor. This was a floor with a very complicated terrain. There were mountains, hills, highlands, forests, and even caves here. If a player were to walk through this floor, the scenery around them would change after a short while. It's a strange sight to behold. There are both good and bad environments. The good ones are comparable to the 47th floor's Garden of Flowers. The bad ones are comparable to the Snow Mountain in the western area of the 55th floor. And a small town called Danik was one of those good environments. It's a small town made of grass and wind. It's filled with greenery. Whenever a player walks through this place, they'll never lose sight of the greenery around them. There's always a gentle breeze blowing through the grass. The buildings here aren't as new as the ones in other towns. Instead, they look like rural buildings with chimneys on their roofs. However, this scenery isn't depressing at all. In fact, it's refreshing. Today, Carito and Liz's wedding will be held on a grassy field in Donna's that has no buildings and no end in sight. Even though it's a wedding, Carito and Liz only invited a few friends and family to attend. It's not like Wu Yin and Asuna's wedding where they invited a large number of players and guilds. It caused a huge commotion in Aincrad and almost caused an overcrowding. This was also the reason why Carito and Liz chose Donna's as the venue for their wedding. It was impossible to create a grand scene like the one on the 47th floor. Carito didn't know if it was because Liz didn't like to receive everyone's blessings while surrounded by a sea of people, or because Carito didn't want to stand out as a solo player. But Wu Yin thinks it's more likely that it's the latter. Carito doesn't have that much money to host such a grand wedding, even if his wife is the owner of a weapon shop. Danik isn't far from the 59th floor's labyrinth area. Most of the players who've been to the 59th floor have been here before, so they're familiar with this place. When Asuna led the clearers to the 59th floor, she used this place as their base, so she's more familiar with Danik than the average player. And so, the family of three walked down from the portal and headed in a certain direction under Asuna's lead. It has been 3 years since the launch of SAO, and most of the players who are really playing the game have gone to the higher floors, such as the 59th floor. Not many players could be seen on this floor. Along the way, Wu Yin, Asuna, and Yui only saw NPCs. He didn't see a single player. Walking on the dirt path, there were neatly arranged buildings on both sides of the path. The NPCs were doing their usual routine of fetching water, washing clothes, cooking, and taking a stroll. Everything was there. Even tomorrow, they would still repeat the same actions without any hesitation. Not even the slightest bit of stiffness. However, it was precisely these actions that were constantly repeated. Otherwise, no matter how beautiful the environment was, there would be very few people who would visit a place without any signs of life. Moreover, those actions made people feel like they're living a real life. Looking at them made people feel comfortable. Not long after, the surrounding buildings began to become fewer and fewer, and the people disappeared without them noticing. Green fields gradually appeared on both sides of the path, and the path was also covered by grass. Everything in front of them was green. A large lawn slowly appeared in front of Wu Yin and the others. On the grassland, not far away, a few tables covered with white tablecloths were arranged together under the cover of a huge tree. A small group of about 10 to 20 people was pacing back and forth around the tables. They were chatting about something while busying themselves with the movements in their hands. Faint laughter could also be heard. Seeing this, Wu Yin and the others knew that they have arrived at their destination. Oh, when Wu Yin and the others got closer, Klein immediately noticed their arrival and laughed out loud. They're here. The model family is finally here. Wu Yin and Asuna grinned at each other. They accepted Klein's praise as a model family. They quickened their steps as they walked up to them. It's been a while. You're still as carefree as ever. Wu Yin shook his head and looked at Klein mockingly. Klein didn't care at all. It's been a while, but the Face Swordsman has always been active in the news. Suda, who was with Klein, nodded and said with admiration, "But I didn't expect you to clear the 96th and 97th floors in just 1 month. You really are the strongest player in the game. I was just lucky. I happened to come across the room of the boss and killed it on the way." Agile's mouth twitched, and he slapped his smooth forehead. "You're probably the only person in SAO who can say that you killed the boss room so easily. Yo, you guys are here." Wu Yin, Asuna, Yui, Klein, Suda, and Agile all turned around and looked at the source of the voice. They saw Kirito in a white suit walking out from a corner under a tree. He looked at Wu Yin and smiled. "If you came any later, I wouldn't have let you in." "Well," Wu Yin shrugged. "Let's see if someone can stop me." Kirito pursed his lips in boredom. Asuna took Yui and stepped forward. "Kirito-kun, congratulations." After saying that, Yui handed a gift box to Kirito. "Uncle Kirito, congratulations. This is our gift to you." "Oh." Kirito took the box in surprise and patted Yui's head. "Thank you so much." Unfortunately, if Kirito knew that the gift box was filled with fresh fish, and it was even placed together with a piece of clothing, what would he think? Well, since they're in SAO, the clothes won't be stained and the fish won't stink, so it shouldn't matter. Gift? Suddenly, a hand reached out from behind Kirito and snatched the gift box from his hand. The person looked at it with interest. "A gift from you guys? I'm looking forward to it." "Liz." Asuna put her hands on her waist and looked at Liz, who's also wearing a white suit. "Today is your wedding ceremony. Mind your image. It's fine, it's fine." Liz waved her hand. "We're all friends here. I don't need to be so careful." "You." Asuna didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Liz." Sachi, Cheyenne, and Silica ran over and stared at Liz while panting. "The guests over there are waiting for you to entertain them. Don't run around." "Uh-huh." Liz scratched her cheeks embarrassedly and retorted. "I'm entertaining guests right now. Look, Asuna and the others are here. Oni-san, you guys are here." Sachi smiled politely. She looked down at Yui and squatted down. Yui-chan, you're here too? Yes, yes. Yui nodded. Yui wants to watch the wedding. Actually, there's nothing much to see. Serene, who was by the side, muttered. Yui and Asuna's wedding was fun and lively. Liz's wedding was boring. Silica recalled Wu Yin and Asuna's wedding. She nodded in agreement. Liz was annoyed by this. I'll tell you. Liz gritted her teeth. I'm getting married. How can you say something like that? Look at me. Wah! Cheyenne and Sheely screamed and quickly ran away. Liz also shouted, Don't run, and chased after them. Everyone was dumbfounded. Is this a party or a wedding? Chapter 735. Liz. Asuna angrily glared at Liz, who was chasing after Cheyenne and Silica. She gritted her teeth and looked at Wu Yin for help. Wu Yin bitterly smiled. Let's go. Don't let that crazy woman fool around. It's our big day. What's the point of this? Asuna nodded. Sachi quickly said, I'll go with you. Asuna and Sachi ran to Liz's side and held her down. They kept yelling at her, making Liz angry. Wu Yin, Kirito, Suda, Klein, and Agile looked at each other. Wu Yin patted Kirito's shoulder and sighed in sympathy. I'm really worried about your future. Kirito smiled awkwardly. His shoulders began to droop as if he had nothing left to live for. Klein facepalmed when he saw Kirito like this. Why don't you invite more people? That way Liz won't be so crazy. Kirito rolled his eyes and stared at Klein until Klein got goosebumps. I don't know a lot of people, and Liz only has a few friends. How can she invite so many people? Oh, I'm sorry, but I don't know a lot of people. Liz only has a few friends. How can she invite so many people? What are you talking about? Klein patted Kirito's shoulder so hard that he almost choked on his own breath. Klein, have a lot of connections. If you want to invite someone, just ask me. I'll make sure you'll be satisfied. Yeah, I'll be satisfied beyond belief. Kirito glanced at Klein with a half-smile. There were a lot of people at Yan's wedding last time because of you. In the end, do we know one of them? Klein's smile froze, and he awkwardly turned his head away. At that time, since Wu Yin doesn't know any of them, the task of entertaining them fell into Klein's hands. In the end, the group of people only said one thing to Wu Yin: congratulations. Agile grinned and shook his head. I knew it. Why did you have to hold a wedding? You should have saved the money. I don't know how many items you can buy with that money. It's not worth it at all. It's all because of Yin. Kirito looked at Wu Yin with resentment. Getting married is just a matter of applying and exchanging rings. In the end, Liz said, Yin held a grand wedding for Asuna. As her best friend, how can I lose to him? And in the end, Kirito turned around and looked at the man who was looking around impatiently. Asuna, Sachi, Cheyenne, Silica, and the others sighed in relief when they saw Liz's reaction. She was exasperated. In the end, it became like this, aha. Wu Yin laughed dryly. The corner of his lips twitched. I can't believe it's because of me. Yui, who was holding Wu Yan's hand, suddenly said. Yui thinks it's good. It's good this way. Wu Yin and the others were stunned. They looked at Yui reflexively. Yui, on the other hand, was looking at Asuna and the others. Everyone has a smile on their faces. They look so happy. Yui hugged Wu Yan's arm with both of her hands. She lifted her head and revealed a cute smile. She even closed her eyes as she giggled. Yui is happy to see everyone so happy. Yui's cute smile made Kirito, Klein, Suda, and Agile smile as well. Wu Yin frowned slightly. His wine-red pupil shrunk as if he thought of something. He looked at Yui thoughtfully. Wu Yin looked at Yui carefully. His lips curved into a smile. He stroked Yui's head and said softly, If Yui is happy, Daddy and Mommy will be happy too. Yui's eyes lit up. She met Wu Yan's gaze. She nodded her head, and the smile on her face became even brighter. Kirito, Klein, Suda, and Agile looked at each other. They saw the strange atmosphere between Wu Yin and Yui and decided to forget about it. Speaking of which, Yin, Keita's expression became serious, and his voice softened a little. During this period of time, have you discovered the room of the 98th floor's guardian boss? Everyone's expression changed when they heard Suda mention the strategy. Wu Yin shook his head helplessly. No, I'm alone. Asuna is the only one who follows me when I go to the labyrinth. It's even harder to find the boss's room than it is for you guys, even if we're on the 98th floor. Aincrad was a gigantic floating city made of steel. It was shaped like a pyramid, and its surface area increased gradually from top to bottom. In other words, the first floor of Aincrad was the largest, while the 100th floor was the smallest. Similarly, the higher the floor, the smaller the area of the labyrinth. By the 98th floor, the area of the labyrinth isn't much. However, the smaller the area, the more monsters there are. The monsters in the labyrinth are grouped up, and it's very difficult to clear them. Even if Wu Yin can kill these monsters in groups, it'll take him a lot of time. Even if he teamed up with Asuna, they won't be able to save much time. With such a difficult strategy, finding the boss room and recording the map will be a lot harder. In terms of difficulty, it's not much different from the labyrinth on the lower floors. That's why, with only 2 people, it's hard for Wu Yin to find the boss's room. He only ran into it by chance on the 96th and 97th floors. Wu Yin rubbed his forehead and looked at Suda. Why are you suddenly asking about the boss room? Suda lowered his head. Kirito, Klein, and Agile seemed to know the reason as well. Their expressions turned heavy, which made Wu Yin frown. Did something happen? Kirito and the others were silent. After a while, Suda said, Recently, the clearers have been in a bad situation. Clearers? Klein closed his eyes and shook his head. You don't know, but recently almost 10% of the clearers died in the labyrinth area. Wah! Wu Yin inhaled a breath of cold air. How is that possible? I've been to the labyrinth area. The monsters there are strong, but it shouldn't be strong enough to kill so many of the clearers, right? So many of them died. Is there a trap? No, that's not it. Agile smiled bitterly. Then is there a certain death setting? Or was there another powerful monster in the labyrinth area? No, that's not it. Suda gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, There are no traps, no certain death settings, and no unusually powerful monsters. The labyrinth area is still the same as before. Other than the map being different and the location of the boss room being different, the monsters and safe areas are all normal. Normal? Wu Yin narrowed his eyes and looked at Kirito and the others seriously. If that's the case, why are there still so many deaths? Let me explain. Kirito took a deep breath and said, To be honest, the clearers should be blamed for this. Wu Yin frowned and didn't say anything. He waited for Kirito to continue. As of now, Aincrad has already reached the 98th floor. There are only 3 floors left to complete the dungeon, including the 98th floor. As long as they can clear those 3 floors and kill the boss on the 100th floor, Isao will come to an end, and the players who are trapped here will be able to leave this world of death. By then, Wu Yan's mission will be complete. No matter what happens to the clearers, he has to be careful. After all, the final boss of Aincrad's 100th floor is inside. Chapter 736. As the topic of conversation unfolded, the atmosphere began to become more and more solemn. Right now, Aincrad's raid is nearing its end. Kirito's eyes were filled with hope when he said this. Not only Kirito, but Klein, Agile, and Suda also had the same feeling. The 4 of them didn't dislike this world, but they didn't like it either. They wanted to leave this world as soon as possible in Sao, except for Wu Yin. Everyone wants to leave this world. Who would like to live in a world where their life could be in danger at any time? Including Asuna. Asuna has been living a blissful life ever since she got married to Wu Yin. However, Asuna didn't want to stay in this world at all. Even though this world brought her many unforgettable memories, she still wanted to go back to the real world with her beloved husband and adorable daughter. After all, Sao is just a game world. There's no sense of belonging in it. People like Wu Yin, who's been traveling around the dungeons, don't care about this world. But for others, being in a world that doesn't belong to them, everything in front of them is fake, and only death is real. No one can bear it. Wu Yin could empathize with their feelings. He saw the same kind of hope in Asuna's eyes more than once. He didn't feel anything wrong with it. However, he didn't expect the deaths of 10% of the clearers to be related to this kind of hope. But Kirito's tone changed. His expression became bitter. As more and more floors were cleared, the clearers became more and more anxious. And now, the clearers are getting more and more anxious. Now, there are only 3 floors left. Once they've cleared the floors, the clearers will be truly liberated and return to the real world. Because of this, the clearers are showing signs of going crazy. In order to return to the real world as soon as possible, some clearers even formed teams in private and went to the labyrinth area without the consent of others. Hearing this, Wu Yan's face darkened. It's understandable that the clearers became anxious when their hope was about to arrive. After all, the earlier the clearers progressed, the faster the clearers progressed. The earlier the day of clearing the dungeon, the closer it would be to the day of leaving. But in this kind of mood, rashly clearing the dungeon would only result in more losses than gains. True enough. Kirito's words confirmed Wu Yan's thoughts. It wouldn't be a big problem if they just formed a team to raid the labyrinth. The problem is the players who are willing to form a team. It's all because of those players who are eager to clear the dungeon. As a result, they're too impatient when facing the monsters in the labyrinth. They didn't consider the relationship between formation, support, and combat power. They lack strategy and only know how to reduce the monster's HP. Kirito didn't say anything else, but everyone understood what he meant. It's like when a player is fighting against a boss in a video game. When the boss's HP is down to the last bar, the average player will start to get anxious. In this kind of situation, the player will usually use the simplest way to solve the problem. For example, rushing forward to clear the boss's HP as soon as possible. For example, during the boss battle on the first floor, a player named Diavel died trying to get the last hit on the boss. Originally, if the clearers kept going like that, they would have won, but in the end, the tables turned. Because the boss is still a boss, if you fight it head-on, you won't have to think about whether the clearers have more HP or the boss has more HP. That's the situation for the clearers who are eager to clear the labyrinth. Although their opponent isn't the boss, as mentioned earlier, the size of the labyrinth will shrink after reaching the 98th floor. The number of monsters will increase and the density will increase. If a clearers impatiently try to kill a monster by attrition, will they have enough HP to resist the monsters around them? They might be able to resist 1 monster, but what about 2, 3, a group? Of course, if the clearers level is higher than the monsters, they can do whatever they want. But the problem is, the monsters on the 98th floor are almost as strong as the clearers in terms of level and strength. Wu Yan bitterly smiled and sighed in his heart. He originally thought that Heathcliff was the one behind the clearer's sudden change. But who would have thought that it's actually the clearer's own fault? What about now? What's the situation with the clearers? What else can they do? They're still the same. Klein gritted his teeth in anger. Even if the clearers' deaths reminded them not to be too anxious, some of them still couldn't hold themselves back when the hope of clearing the labyrinth was right in front of them. They're like idiots. They know that it's not right to be impatient, but they still insist on going deeper. They're just a bunch of idiots. That's not all, Agile said in a deep voice. There's another group of clearers who didn't want to risk their lives, so they didn't pay attention to the monsters in the labyrinth and instead searched for the boss room. These clearers didn't die because they ran around randomly and attracted too many monsters, but after a while they realized that their level couldn't keep up with the frontline clearers anymore. In order to catch up with the frontline clearers, these clearers became impatient and blindly leveled up in the labyrinth. Suda raised his head and looked at the sky. Basically, that's how 10% of the clearers died. That's stupid, Wu Yan commented. Why should they be impatient? It can't be helped, Kirito said in a serious tone. After all, hope is right in front of them. Ian shook his head and stopped talking about this. What about Heathcliff? Yep. Kirito, Suda, Klein, and Agile shook their heads and sighed. He's not in a good situation either. Wu Yan raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Some of the clearers are getting impatient, but they don't dare to enter the labyrinth because of the 10% death rate. They've already banded together and protested against Heathcliff. Suda said in a serious tone, "They want the clearers to speed up the process and find the boss room as soon as possible so that they can leave this world as soon as possible." A bunch of idiots. Klein cursed. They don't have the guts to go, but they're forcing others to follow them. Do they want all the clearers to die before they're satisfied? What did Heathcliff say? Wu Yin looked at Kirito. Delay. Delay as much as possible, Kirito said. That's the only way out of this situation. Wu Yin lowered his head, but after a while, he suddenly looked up. What do you guys say? Kirito, Suda, Klein, and Agile were stunned. Seeing them like this, Wu Yin chuckled as if he already expected this. You guys didn't think too much about it. Under Heathcliff's leadership, you've already gotten used to relying on him. Wu Yin put on a serious face, and he emphasized each and every word. Listen up, you four, you need to seriously think about your strategy from now on. Otherwise, when Heathcliff suddenly disappears one day, the clearers will become a pile of loose sand and be at the mercy of others. It'll be impossible to completely clear the dungeon. Wu Yin grabbed Yui's hand, and they walked towards Asuna's direction. The four of them were left in a daze, lost in their own thoughts. Chapter 737. In the end, Kirito and Liz's wedding came to an end amidst everyone's joyful celebration and fun. Kirito, Klein, Suda, and Agile returned to normal after listening to Wu Yan's words. Perhaps they didn't want to talk about such heavy topics since today is Kirito's big day. However, Wu Yan could see that Kirito, Klein, Suda, and Agile's eyes have changed a little. They looked more energetic than before. At this point, Wu Yan knew that the four of them had taken his words to heart. After today, the atmosphere of the clearers should change a little. After all, only a small portion of the clearers are stupid enough to rush to their deaths, and most of them are already dead. Even if the rest of the clearers are anxious, they'll still follow the rules. At the very least, they'll listen to other people's words. In the end, the main reason why things got to this point was that Heathcliff was only the clearest leader, not the clearest leader. There were also moonlit black cats and Furinkazan in the clearers. Not just Knights of the Blood, but also moonlit black cats and Furinkazan. Their real leaders are Klein and Suda. Normally, they'll listen to Heathcliff's orders since they're also clearers, but they won't obey him. That's why when something like this happens, the clearers will rebel and go against the higher-ups. This is also one of the reasons why Wu Yin warned Kirito and the others before. While Aincrad is about to be completely cleared, Kirito, Klein, Suda, and Agile are also a little anxious. Of course, they weren't stupid enough to throw their lives away like those idiots. They put all their focus on the clearers to the point that they didn't even manage their own guild. As a result, Heathcliff was the only one in charge of the clearers. That's why so many clearers went to Heathcliff for help, mostly because no one was paying attention to them anymore. With this reminder, with Klein and Suda's personalities, they should start to realize that something was wrong with them and adjust their state of mind. This way, they would be able to better conquer the remaining 3 floors. What's more, Wu Yin isn't being an alarmist. He knew that Heathcliff was Kaiba Akihiko from the very beginning. He also knew that the boss of the 100th floor of Aincrad was Heathcliff himself. In other words, just as Wu Yin said, Heathcliff will still lead the clearers to clear Aincrad's 98th and 99th floors, but when they reach the 100th floor, Heathcliff will really turn on them. At that time, without Heathcliff's leadership, the clearers will definitely fall into chaos. Wu Yin is also giving Kirito and the others a heads up. At least, Klein and Suda will have a say in the clearers. That way, when Heathcliff turns on them, the clearers won't be caught off guard, they won't lose their leader and be destroyed. In fact, the best way is to let Asuna return to the clearers. That way, all the problems will be solved. With Asuna's reputation in the clearers, if she stands up for the clearers, the effect will be no less than Heathcliff's, and the chaos in the clearers will be quelled. However, Wu Yin doesn't want to drag Asuna into that whirlpool again. It wasn't easy for him to live a peaceful life where he could see Asuna's smile every day. Wu Yin didn't want Asuna to go back to that place where she's not happy at all. Plus, A man is more than enough when it comes to fighting for the sake of success. In any case, today's wedding was considered a perfect process. When night fell, the curtain fell and the wedding ended. As for the conversation between Wu Yin, Kirito, Klein, Suda, and Agile, it's just a small interlude. Aincrad, 22nd floor, phew. Wu Yin laid down on the sofa with one hand on his forehead. He looked like he had no strength left in him. I'm so tired. Don't lie down as soon as you come back. Asuna pouted, but Wu Yin only smiled bitterly. I don't want to, but my head feels heavy and uncomfortable. Uncomfortable? Asuna frowned and sat down beside Wu Yin. She touched his cheek and noticed that Wu Yin was indeed uncomfortable. She couldn't help but worry. Are you okay? Are you feeling unwell? Yui, who had already closed the door, ran over to the sofa and said to Asuna, Dad, he drank. Drank? Asuna paused and looked at Wu Yin. Her chestnut-colored eyes were filled with dissatisfaction. You drank? I can't help it. Wu Yin rubbed his temples and patted his head. It's all because of Klein and Agile, those two bastards. They forced me to drink with them. I thought everyone was having a good time today, so I decided to drink with them. Who would have thought that drinking an SAO would give me a hangover? I'm not drunk yet. Asuna snorted and turned her head away. Why did you drink so much when you don't know how to drink? You reap what you sow. Wu Yin twitched the corner of his mouth. I'm one of the better ones. Kirito is the worst one. He's still underage, and Klein forced him to drink twice as much as me with the excuse that this is a game. I'm afraid he's going to fall asleep tonight, or he's going to do something to Liz under the influence of alcohol. Asuna blushed when she heard Wu Yan's words. Yui blinked and curiously looked at Asuna. Mom, what's that? What's Uncle Kirito going to do with Aunt Liz? And nothing. Asuna laughed awkwardly and slapped Wu Yan's stomach. It was so painful that Wu Yan almost jumped up. Don't be a bad influence on your child. Okay. It's my fault. Wu Yin smiled apologetically, indicating that he won't do it again. However, Yui didn't give up and she kept on asking. Hey, what's that? Yui wants to know. That. Asuna's mouth twitched. She pointed at Wu Yin helplessly. Go ask your dad. No way. Wu Yin wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Yui blinked and turned to look at Wu Yin. She stared at Wu Yin with her big bright eyes. Combined with that cute little face of hers, Wu Yin almost flipped over from how cute she is. Dad, what's that? Wu Yin smiled awkwardly and patted Yui's head. He pretended to be serious and said, Don't ask questions like that. Oh. Yui answered in a muffled voice and lay down beside Wu Yin. Asuna glared at Wu Yin and stood up angrily. Seriously, we didn't even drink when we got married. What should we do now that we're this drunk? There's no item in SAO that can help us sober up. Although there's no item that can help us sober up. Wu Yin sighed. But this kind of dizziness or sleep should be categorized as an abnormal state. Let's try an item that can remove abnormal states. Asuna pondered for a moment and nodded. She turned around and walked into the kitchen. Yui, please take care of Dad. Okay. Yui became energetic again. She stood up and hugged Wu Yan's arm. She looked at him with a smile and let Wu Yan pinch her cheeks. Wu Yan looked at Yui's smiling face and thought about something. Although Yui's behavior is the same as before, during Kirito's wedding, Yui's words were normal but strange at the same time. It aroused Wu Yan's suspicion. Should I talk to Yui about it? Chapter 738. Yui, it's time to sleep. Yes, Yui, who was sitting on the sofa, responded loudly. She jumped to the ground, but just as she was about to rush into her room, she stopped, hesitated for a moment, then turned around. Yui looked at Wu Yin, who was sitting in front of her, and her eyes were filled with hope. Hey, Daddy. Yui leaned over and jumped into Wu Yan's arms. Can I sleep with Mommy and Daddy tonight? Wu Yin and Asuna looked at each other with a strange expression. It's not that Yui's request is unreasonable or strange. Yui has been living alone in her room since a year ago. She didn't ask to sleep with Wu Yin and Asuna, but Yui is still a child. It's normal for her to ask for such a thing. The reason why the two of them had a strange expression is because they remembered the reason why they gave Yui a room alone. To be more precise, It's because of Wu Yin. As an energetic young man, Wu Yin spent his first 2 years in SAO in agony. Every night he spent in SAO was filled with agony. His wives weren't around, so he couldn't have sex with them. Wu Yin couldn't stand it. Although a true ancestor's body is immortal, if he continues to hold it in, even if his body doesn't have any problems, his mind will. At least, Wu Yin was very irritable every night. Fortunately, God was kind to him and sent Asuna to his side, giving Wu Yin a chance to have sex again. In addition, the two of them were married, so it was even more justifiable for them to do what they loved. Drywood met a raging fire. Of course, he wants to have fun every night. Yui, who was sleeping with Wu Yin and Asuna, was taken aback. Because of her father's evil thoughts, she slept alone in her own room. He didn't have a choice. With such a cute loli by his side, Wu Yin couldn't possibly turn her down. Even if he wanted to, Asuna wouldn't listen to him no matter what. He had no choice but to do so. He can't just let Yui sleep with him. Then he'll be the devil's father. With that thought in mind, Wu Yin could only mutter Umitba 3,655 times before he tidied up a beautiful room for Yui to satisfy his evil thoughts. Yui was very obedient. Although she was a little unwilling at first, she seemed to have understood that her parents had something they couldn't say, so she obediently listened to them. In the past year, Yui didn't mention that she wanted to sleep in the same room with Wu Yin and Asuna. It's like she got used to it. Until now. That's why the two of them had strange expressions on their faces. Thinking about the reason why he let Yui sleep in the same room as him, Wu Yin was embarrassed. Asuna's cheeks and ears turned red. However, Yui, who buried her head in Wu Yan's arms, didn't notice it. She just quietly looked at Wu Yan's wine-red eyes. Her face was full of expectation. Looking at Yui's expectant expression, even if Wu Yin had evil thoughts, he couldn't bear to refuse. It's just one night anyway. He's already endured 2 years, so why would he care about one night? Okay. Yin hugged Yui and said with a smile, "Mom and Dad will accompany you tonight." Yui immediately showed a big smile and threw herself into Wu Yan's arms. She rubbed against his chest with indescribable happiness. Asuna, who was blushing, couldn't help but smile. The door opened quickly. Yui was the first to rush in. She jumped onto the bed and buried herself in the quilt. She stuck her head out and waved at Wu Yin and Asuna. "Dad, Mom, come here. Coming. Wu Yin shook his head and laughed. He and Asuna slept next to Yui and poked her cheeks. "How old are you? Stop acting like a spoiled child." Yui wrinkled her nose and held Wu Yin and Asuna's hands. "Yui just wants to sleep with Mom and Dad." Asuna narrowed her eyes and held Yui in her arms. She glanced at Wu Yin. "Don't bully children." Wu Yin was speechless. "I didn't bully." Asuna turned a deaf ear and looked down at Yui. She patted her back. "All right, let's sleep." Yui nodded and yawned. She closed her eyes and fell into a deep slumber. Wu Yin and Asuna didn't sleep. They quietly watched Yui sleep. It was as if they were afraid that she would wake up from a nightmare and couldn't find anyone to rely on. They smiled and their eyes softened. Asuna helped Yui tidy up her bangs. Her chestnut-colored eyes were filled with nostalgia. "I remember the first time I met Yui. She was just like this, sleeping quietly." Asuna looked at Wu Yin. "How long has it been since I saw Yui's sleeping face?" "It hasn't been that long." Wu Yin didn't move his eyes away from Yui. "I see it almost every night." Asuna was stunned. "Almost every night?" "Yeah. What's wrong?" Wu Yin said matter-of-factly. "Yui sleeps in her own room, so of course she's worried. Every night before she goes to bed, I go to her room to check on her. You don't know how obedient she is. She doesn't even kick her blanket away." Asuna frowned when she heard Wu Yan's words. She stared at Wu Yin with dissatisfaction. "Aren't you a little too cunning?" It was Wu Yan's turn to be stunned. "Why do you say that? I can't believe you did this behind my back." Asuna muttered. "I only care about being a good father." "You make it sound like I'm not a good father." "I can't help it." Wu Yin grinned. "Seeing how tired you are every night, I can't bear to wake you up." "How dare you?" The look in Asuna's eyes became dangerous. In the end, you were the one who suggested sending Yui to another room. That's why I haven't seen her sleeping face for so long. It's all your fault. How can you say that? Wu Yin retorted. Children need to be independent. What's wrong with giving them some privacy? Asuna gritted her teeth. Her teeth were chattering loudly. She was obviously annoyed. He only let Yui sleep in the same room as him to satisfy his own evil desires. Now he's talking about it in such a righteous manner. How shameless. That's enough. Wu Yan's heart skipped a beat when he saw Asuna looking like she wanted to take a bite out of him. Only he knew how sharp Asuna's teeth are. She had bitten him many times over the past year. If this wasn't a game, he would have become a celebrity by now. Wu Yan quickly tried to calm her down. Don't go overboard. The child is still sleeping. Don't wake her up. Don't make it sound like I don't care about the child. Asuna's voice softened. She glanced at Yui and said to Wu Yan in a serious tone, From now on, when you visit Yui at night, you must call me along. Huh, you're not allowed to. Asuna glared at him and said in an unquestionable tone, Did you hear me? Wu Yan's mouth twitched. He saw the determination on Asuna's face. He knew Asuna was jealous. But whether she's jealous of herself or her child remains to be seen. Fine, fine. Wu Yan rolled his eyes at Asuna. Fine, fine, fine. Asuna pouted and placed her head on top of Yui's head. She ignored Wu Yan. Her eyelids fluttered and slowly closed. Wu Yan laughed and shook his head. He gently pulled Asuna and Yui into his arms and closed his eyes. Not long after, 3 very even breaths began to reverberate throughout the entire room. After a long time, Yui, who was sleeping in the middle, suddenly opened her eyes. Chapter 739. His eyes seemed to be able to speak as they flashed in the dark room. They were like stars in the night sky, causing ripples to appear in the warm night sky due to the family of 3 sleeping together in harmony. Yui slowly opened her eyes. She no longer had the sleepiness she had before. It's obvious that Yui didn't fall asleep from the beginning to the end. Yui turned her head to look at Wu Yan and Asuna. She looked at Wu Yan and Asuna with a dazed expression. She heard everything that was said just now. Yui gently broke free from Wu Yan and Asuna's arms. She sat up on the bed and looked at her parents. She reached out her hand as if she wanted to touch them, but she was a little timid. Like she got an electric shock, she reached out, then pulled back, then reached out, then pulled back again. She kept repeating this action. Her lively and cute little face is now filled with sadness. In the end, Yui didn't have the courage to stretch her hand out. She slowly retracted her hand and said something in an inaudible voice. The next moment, she actually floated up from the bed. Yui flew above the bed like a fairy. She hovered there for a while before quietly flying to the side of the bed. Her movements were very careful. When she landed, she slowed down as if she was afraid that she would wake Wu Yan and Asuna up if she made the slightest noise. Dad! Mom! Yui's eyes trembled. Her gaze had been fixed on the 2 people on the bed ever since she landed, and the light in her eyes gradually dimmed. Droplets of water began to appear, scaring Yui. Yui quickly wiped her eyes. She turned around. She looked at Wu Yan and Asuna one last time and walked out of the room without hesitation. She was afraid. She was afraid that she would look at them one more time. She couldn't hold back her tears anymore. Yui opened the door and walked out. She didn't turn on the lights in the living room. She walked to the window in the dark and pushed it open. Then she walked out of the balcony. The forest at night is very quiet. It's so quiet that not a single sound can be heard. Not far away, the surface of the lake is rippling. Little arcs of light reflected off the surface of the lake, creating a beautiful scene as if the lake is glowing. The ripples are slowly moving. It's a beautiful scene. The lake is glowing, the sky is glowing, but the lake is glowing as a whole. The sky, on the other hand, is glowing little by little. The night in SAO is beautiful. This is what the 6,000 players in the game agree. Aside from some special areas, such as the snowy areas, the sky is very dark. Other than thunderstorm areas and other areas where dark clouds cover the entire night sky, anyone who could see the night sky would involuntarily gasp in admiration. Compared to the real world, Sao's night sky is filled with stars every night. They gather together and form a galaxy, crossing the dark night sky in all directions. The beautiful scenery makes it possible to see one's hand in front of one's face when there's no light at night. Some people would even be attracted by the night sky when they walk on the streets, causing them to only come back to their senses when monsters get close to them. One can only imagine how beautiful Sao's night sky is. Lifting her head to look at the beautiful starry sky and moon, this beautiful scenery that should be able to calm one's heart didn't calm Yui at all. In fact, under Yui's somewhat sad gaze, even the surrounding moonlight seems to have been infected, bringing a bit of coldness. Under the moonlight, Yui's eyes became more and more blurred. She reached out her small hand and raised it above her head. She looked at the moon as if she wanted to grab it. Only a sentence filled with confusion echoed in the air. What should I do? At this time, a pair of hands suddenly stretched out from behind Yui and wrapped around her, lifting her up. Yui was shocked, but before she could react, a warm embrace wrapped around her small body. To Yui, this embrace was extremely familiar because she would stay in this embrace for a period of time every day. It was the same just now. In addition, in Sao, if the owner of the house doesn't allow someone to enter the house, no one can enter the house. The only person who can hold me is Papa. The person who appeared behind Yui and hugged her is Wu Yan. Yui didn't know when he woke up, but she didn't know when he came here. However, Yui didn't feel relieved when she recognized the person. Instead, she panicked even more. She looked up and saw Wu Yan smiling at her. She felt a little uneasy. Papa, you're naughty. Yui. Wu Yan hugged Yui's back and hugged her again. He stood up and patted her little head with his free hand. It's so late and you're still awake. This isn't what a good child should do. Yui opened her mouth. She couldn't say a word for a long time. Wu Yan didn't say anything. He hugged Yui and looked up at the night sky. Yui looked up too. The moonlight was still as bright as ever, illuminating everything here. The moon was slowly drifting in another direction at a speed visible to the naked eye, carrying the moonlight and starlight with it. There was not a trace of sound as it drifted away, signifying the passage of time. Wu Yan and Yui looked at this scene. They didn't say a word. Yui didn't know how to explain it. Wu Yan seemed to be waiting for something. After a long time, Ji lowered her head and said in a low voice, "Why?" Hearing Yui's voice, Wu Yan finally retracted his gaze from the night sky and looked at Yui. It's as if he can see through her heart. I should be the one who said that, right? Yui fell silent, and the atmosphere fell into silence once again. Seeing this, Wu Yan sighed and said something that surprised Yui. Yui, Wu Yan said in an unknown tone, have you recovered your memory? Hearing this, Yui lowered her head even more. The bangs on her forehead covered her face. It's hard to see her expression. Wu Yan didn't rush her. He just smiled faintly and looked at Yui, waiting for her answer. Even with her head lowered, Yui could guess that Wu Yan was looking at her. A pair of small hands tightly grabbed Wu Yan's clothes. Her red lips slightly opened. I remember everything. A pair of big eyes fell on Wu Yan's face. Yui's eyes were a bit sad, but when she saw Wu Yan's gentle smile, Yui's eyes brightened up a bit. She seemed to have gained a lot of courage. She summoned her courage and spoke slowly. Actually, I'm not human. The words coming out of Yui's mouth are enough to stun an ignorant person. They might even throw Yui away in shock. Yui was also waiting for Wu Yan's reaction when he heard this. To her surprise, after hearing her words, Wu Yan's expression didn't change at all. Even the smile on his face was still as gentle as ever. Yui thought Wu Yan didn't believe her. She couldn't help but say, I'm not lying, it's all true. Hearing this, Wu Yan's expression didn't change at all. He hugged Yui tightly and rested his face on her head. His wine-red eyes looked straight at the sky. I already knew. Yui's body shook. Chapter 740. I already knew. His voice clearly echoed in Ju Yi's ears. causing her originally uneasy heart to immediately become chaotic. However, before Ju could say anything, the following words caused her to be completely focused. And so, Fulham, this game is controlled by a huge system. Yui gritted her teeth, and she lowered her head again. She listened to Wu Yin reciting what she was supposed to say in an ethereal tone. Her mind is in a mess. The system is called Cardinal. It's a system that doesn't need human maintenance. It has a huge computing power. It can adjust the balance of SAO based on its own judgment. Whether it's the AI of monsters, NPCs, items, or equipment, it's all controlled by a group of programs controlled by Cardinal, including the treatment of abnormal mental states. Wu Yin could feel Yui's body trembling. He looked straight at Yui's face and smiled bitterly. Yui, you're an AI, a program used to provide mental support, right? Yui raised her head and looked at Wu Yin in shock. Her courage to confess to Wu Yin disappeared in an instant. Only panic and helplessness remained. Why? Why would you? Wu Yin shook his head. He didn't answer Yui's question. Instead, he looked at Yui's eyes and smiled. I knew from the very beginning. From the day I brought Yui back. From the beginning, Yui trembled in disbelief. If that's the case, then why did you bring me back? I had no choice. I had no choice. Wu Yin put his hand on Yui's head. He stroked her beautiful long hair. Who wouldn't help a little girl who fainted in front of them? Little girl. Yui forced a smile. She curled her body into a ball. I'm just a program, not a little girl. Is that so? Wu Yin turned around and made Yui face the corner of the room. There were photos of himself, Asuna, Yui, Kirito, Liz Klein, Suda, Agile, Sachi, Cheyenne, Silica, and the others. Look at those faces. Wu Yin pointed at the photos of Kirito and the others. He said to Yui, Yui, can you tell me that none of them treated you like a human? Think back to the little gifts your Uncle Kirito, Uncle Klein, Uncle Suda, Uncle Agile, and the others brought you out to play every time they came back from the labyrinth area. Annie Liz, Annie Sachi, Annie Cheyenne, and Annie Shilly brought you out to play every time they visited you. Yui, can you still say that you're just a program? Yui gradually lost her mind. He seemed to have recalled that scene, but it didn't take long for him to sober up and shake his head forcefully. No, it's not like that. Everything about me is just a program. My tears are fake, my body is fake, and my emotions are fake. The feelings are also fake. How could? Wu Yin closed his eyes when he heard Yui's words. Yeah, your body is fake, your tears are fake. People in this world, who isn't like that? Yui was stunned. Wu Yin hugged her tightly and said softly, Yui, Daddy will teach you a lesson today. In this world, everything is fake. Everyone is the same. Whether it's players, NPCs, or even monsters, their bodies are fake, their tears are fake. I have to say, Kaiba Akihiko's ability is superb. He can perfectly simulate these things, but no matter how good Kaiba Akihiko is, he can't recreate emotions. So, Yui, in this world, everything can be fake, but emotions can't be fake. Wu Yin smiled and pressed Yui's face against his chest. How is it? Daddy's embrace, is it warm? Yui couldn't help but nod. Wu Yan's smile became even brighter. So, Yui, do you like Daddy? Yui raised her head and looked at Wu Yan's face. The next moment, tears uncontrollably flowed down her cheeks and dripped to the ground. She clutched Wu Yan's clothes tightly and buried her head in Wu Yan's chest. Yes, yes, Yui likes Daddy the most, and Mommy the most. Yui's cries echoed in the silent night. Her tears soaked Wu Yan's clothes. Yui wants to be with Daddy and Mommy. I don't want to leave Daddy and Mommy. Suddenly, a figure rushed out from the hall and quickly arrived in front of the two of them. The figure hugged Yui. Wu Yan was shocked when he saw the figure. Asuna. Yui. Asuna's cheeks were already filled with tears. She hugged Yui's little body tightly and squeezed her into her arms. We will always be together. Mommy won't leave you. Mommy. It doesn't matter if Yui is an AI, an NPC, or a monster. It doesn't matter. Asuna smiled and cried at the same time. Her arms were getting tighter and tighter. I only know that Yui is my daughter, Mommy. Yui's tears flowed freely from her beautiful eyes. She couldn't stop the tears from rolling down her cheeks. She hugged Asuna tightly and sobbed as she left the room. Yui couldn't stop the tears from rolling down her cheeks. Looking at the mother and daughter hugging each other and crying, Wuyan didn't feel good about it. In this world, the two most important people to him are crying so hard, he's sure that no one would feel good about it. Yui seemed to have noticed the pain in Wu Yan's heart. She stopped crying and wiped her face. Her tear-stained face turned into a smile. "Thank you, Daddy and Mommy. I will cherish these last moments." Last moments? Wu Yan's pupils shrunk. Last moments. Asuna's face turned pale. Her eyes were filled with panic. Why? Yui's smile turned bitter. She hugged Asuna's neck. Currently, Aincrad has cleared the 98th floor with the help of the current players. As long as we clear the next 3 floors and defeat the 100th floor boss, we'll be able to clear SAO and leave this world. Yui looked at Wu Yin and Asuna. Her eyes started to lose focus. 3 years ago, SAO underwent a huge change. It changed from a simple game to a game of death. Since then, the players started to feel fear, despair, and hatred. The game was filled with negative emotions. Even though the people around Daddy and Mommy started to face this world, leaving this world has become everyone's wish. Daddy, Mommy, you will leave this world sooner or later. Yui looked at Wu Yin and Asuna with longing. I'm just a program. I can't leave this world. Asuna's face turned paler and paler. She covered her mouth as she started sobbing. Wu Yin, on the other hand, laughed out loud. Yui. Wu Yin hugged Asuna, and Yui, he said. Don't worry, Daddy has a way. Papa. Yui flinched. Asuna also looked at Wu Yin when she regained her senses. Yeah, don't worry. Wu Yin hugged them tightly. You just need to trust me. Asuna and Yui looked at Wu Yin in silence. Then, they nodded with a firm expression. Chapter 741. The next morning, when Wu Yin woke up and walked out of his room, the first thing he saw was Asuna and Yui. They were sitting on the sofa, drinking tea and chatting with each other. They had bright smiles on their faces and giggles could be heard from time to time. It was a harmonious scene between mother and daughter. Judging from the smiles on their faces, those who didn't know would never know that the two of them were crying their hearts out last night. Even the two of them seemed to have forgotten everything that happened last night. However, if one were to observe carefully, they would notice that the relationship between Asuna and Yui seemed to have gotten better than before. Good morning, Papa. Oh, it's too late. While Wu Yin was still immersed in the scene of two beautiful girls teasing each other, Asuna and Yui finally noticed Wu Yan's arrival. Their gazes immediately shifted to Wu Yan. However, the words that came out of their mouths were completely different. The concern and warmth in their words were exactly the same. Wu Yan's lips curved upwards. Sorry. Wu Yin waved his hand at Asuna and Yui without any sincerity. He then walked over to Asuna and sat down. Yui immediately jumped into Wu Yan's arms, causing Asuna to be dissatisfied. Oh, when are you going to change your bad habit of sleeping in? Don't even think about it. Wu Yin casually picked up a cup and drank from it. Sleeping in is a form of enjoyment for me. The happiness of sleeping in until I wake up naturally, the happiness of having a cramp on my face when I dream is something normal people can't understand. That's my cup. Asuna snatched the cup from Wu Yan's hand and placed her hands on her waist. You're so lazy. Be careful that people don't like you. Wu Yin raised an eyebrow and gently lifted Yui up. Hey, Yui, will you just like Papa? As soon as he said that, Yui's little head shook like a rattle drum. Yui won't despise Daddy, but Mommy is starting to dislike Daddy. Wu Yin pretended to be sad as he patted Yui's head. In the future, we, father and daughter, will have to rely on each other. Mother is a bad person. Yui turned against her mother without hesitation. Asuna was furious. She looked at Wu Yin, who had a sad expression on his face, but there was a hint of pride in his eyes. She gritted her teeth for a while, and her cheeks puffed up. You father and daughter are teaming up to bully me again. Mom said we bullied her. so pitiful. Yeah, why don't we forgive her? Forgive me, forgive me. Uh, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Asuna angrily turned her back to Wu Yin and Yui. Seeing this, Wu Yin and Yui looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. Asuna's expression softened and she revealed a smile. Scenes like this happened almost every day in the past, even when Kirito and the others came to visit. This was also the origin of the model family that Klein called them. For outsiders, there was nothing better than this scene to show the good relationship between the three of them. After bullying Asuna, Yui ran to her side and comforted her, as usual. Wu Yin picked up the paper on the table and started reading. However, it didn't take long for Wu Yin to frown. The smile on his face slowly disappeared and was replaced by a serious expression. The harmonious and loving atmosphere changed because of Wu Yan's sudden change. What's wrong? Seeing the change in Wu Yan's expression, Asuna also stopped smiling. Wu Yan narrowed his eyes and put down the paper in his hand. 98th floor cleared. Cleared? Asuna was startled for a second. She didn't feel relieved at all. Isn't that a good thing? Wu Yan looked at Asuna and shook his head. It's supposed to be a good thing. Wu Yan didn't continue and handed the paper in his hand to Asuna. Asuna took the paper in confusion and her chestnut-colored eyes scanned the information on the paper. The next moment, her expression changed drastically. 30 clearers. Half of them are dead. How is this possible? Asuna was stunned. Even if it's a floor boss, the clearers should still be safe with their current level. How? Ever since the 75th floor was cleared a year ago, it had been a long time since such a large number of casualties occurred. Except for the 76th floor, where the Divine Dragon Alliance members overestimated themselves, the rest of the clearers have been very smooth. Not counting the floors that Wu Yin cleared, the clearers have cleared a total of 15 floors up to the 98th floor. But in these 15 floors, the clearers didn't have more than a single-digit number of casualties. Now, in just one floor, the clearers lost half of their 30 members. That's a total of 15 people. This kind of casualty rate is even higher than the floor boss that only appears once every 25 floors. Could it be that the 98th floor boss is as strong as the floor boss that only appears once every 25 floors? Maybe it's possible, but Wu Yin is more willing to believe that it's the clearer's fault. Deep in thought, Wu Yin recalled the conversation he had with Kirito and the others yesterday and explained it to Asuna. You're saying Asuna was surprised because we're about to clear the floor boss. The clearer's mental state is a bit off. That should be the case. Wu Yin closed his eyes and continued. Their impatience has reduced their combat strength by more than half. They already lost 10% of their forces in the labyrinth area. What's more, they're going up against the boss. Asuna was silent for a long time before she let out a long sigh. There are only a few floors left. Once we clear them, we can leave this world. As the victims, they've been trapped in this death game for 3 whole years. No one has suffered more than them. Now that hope is right in front of us, it's only natural that something like this would happen. Asuna took a deep breath and looked at Wu Yin. Yin, what about Kirito and the others? They're fine. Wu Yin opened his profile and clicked into his friend list. Kirito, Klein, Suda, and Agile's names are still lit. That's good. Asuna sighed in relief. Wu Yin looked at the interface in front of him. His expression fluctuated before he suddenly said something. Asuna, do you think it's time for us to make a move? Asuna froze and turned to look at Wu Yin. You mean? Wu Yin met Asuna's gaze. It's time for us to speed up and leave this world. Leave this world. Asuna's eyes flickered. She lowered her head and pondered for a moment. Then, her expression became firm as she nodded. That's right. There are only 2 floors left. We can't sit here forever. Asuna then looked at Yui in her arms. But Yui, it's okay, Mommy. Yui showed an understanding smile. Yui will take care of the house and wait for Mommy and Daddy to come back. But Yui isn't an immature child. She's a lot stronger than she looks. Wu Yin patted Yui's head and smiled. Plus, we have a lot of time ahead of us. Once we get back to the real world, we'll be able to live a carefree life. The real world. Asuna and Yui looked at each other and opened their mouths. They wanted to say something, but they remembered what Wu Yin said last night and decided against it. All she needed to do was to believe in him. Yui, let Sachi and the others take care of her for now. Wu Yin made his decision when he saw Asuna's reluctant expression. Be a good girl and wait for us to come back. You okay? Chapter 742. Aincrad, 99th floor. Early in the morning, players walked out of the teleportation gate plaza one after another. Their faces were filled with excitement as they spread out in all directions. Among the players who came to the 99th floor, some of them are top players whose levels can keep up with the rest of the players. Some of them barely reach the higher floors, and some of them aren't even level 80 yet. Most of them are newbies on the 99th floor, let alone the labyrinth. They can't even get out of the wilderness. However, this did not diminish the eagerness in their hearts. There were still players who moved over from the lower floors and wandered around the entire town. From time to time, they would glance at the stone tower stairs that reached the clouds in the distance. Their eyes were filled with hope. All they need to do is conquer that tower, and they'll be able to reach the last floor of Aincrad, the 100th floor. Every player who was looking at the stairs of the stone tower had the same thought in their minds. They were extremely excited, and their eyes were filled with hope. If it weren't for the issue of combat power, perhaps all the players here would have rushed out and flattened the labyrinth area. From this point of view, these low-level players are much more self-aware than the so-called top players in the clearers. Aincrad has a total of 100 floors in the shape of a pyramid. From top to bottom, the area will gradually increase. At the 99th floor, it's actually not that big anymore. The stairs of the labyrinth area are located at the center of the 99th floor, and there are only 4 towns surrounding it. Other than that, the rest of the area is the wilderness. There are only 4 towns on the 99th floor. It's easy to imagine how small the 99th floor is compared to the lower floors. Come to think of it, in the real world, a slightly bigger town would be bigger than the 99th floor, right? Meanwhile, in the town closest to the 99th floor labyrinth area, at the teleport gates plaza, ding, a beautiful sound effect rang out and a ripple of light appeared in the middle of the teleport gates plaza. Wu Yin and Asuna only saw a flash of light in front of their eyes, and they lost their balance for a few seconds. When they regained their balance, the scene in front of them lit up again. The stone tower in the labyrinth area. It just so happened that it was imprinted in their eyes at the very first moment. The platform they're standing on is made of moist rocks. Maybe it's a rainy day on this floor. Wu Yin and Asuna stood on the platform and looked up at the towering stone tower that stretched as far as the eye could see. It was as if he was right in front of her eyes. The two of them stood there quietly, looking at the stone pagoda. Neither of them spoke. No one knew what they were thinking. Patting his cheeks, Wu Yin touched the hilt of Sky Gazer on his back. He felt much more at ease now. Let's go. Asuna came back to her senses and took a deep breath. A serious expression that hadn't appeared on her face for a long time appeared on her face. At this moment, the ghost of strategy, who led the clearers and the vice leader of Knights of the Blood, seemed to have returned. She had given up the title of Ghost Conqueror and the title of Knights of the Blood, but she had never given up the title of Flash. Directly to the labyrinth area? Let's go directly to the labyrinth area. Wu Yin walked down the platform. With our current level, we should be safe enough to face the monsters in the labyrinth area. If there are no accidents, Wu Yin paused and looked at Asuna. Are you sure you don't want to reconsider? Yui really wants to stay with you. In fact, Wu Yin already knew what Asuna's answer would be. Otherwise, he wouldn't have suggested Sachi to take care of Yui. In the past, Wu Yin could use the excuse of taking care of Yui to make Asuna stay at home obediently. But now, Asuna knows Yui's true identity. She also knows that Yui isn't as naive as she looks. On the contrary, Yui, who has access to the entire SEO database, is an AI that specializes in human psychology and spirit. Yui is much more knowledgeable than the two of them. It would be strange if Asuna could stay at home after knowing Yui's ability. But Wu Yin still couldn't help but ask. Asuna glanced at Wu Yin and didn't say anything. She grabbed Wu Yan's hand and walked towards the labyrinth area. Wu Yan smiled bitterly. He was defeated by Asuna's silent action. He had no choice but to accept Asuna's domineering attitude. The labyrinth area is only one map away from the nearest town. It's not a small area, but it's not a big one either. As Wu Yan expected, the monsters in the wild are slightly weaker. Asuna won't have a problem fighting alone unless she's surrounded by a large group of monsters. However, Wu Yan has already released the Healing Fairy. Even after a year, the Healing Fairy's appearance hasn't changed at all. It can still restore 20% HP every minute. The only thing that changed is that the Healing Fairy can now heal other players. As long as the player is in Wu Yan's party, they can enjoy the healing effect of the Healing Fairy. Sometimes, the Healing Fairy can even trigger group healing. After a minute, if they're lucky, all the players in Wu Yan's party, including Wu Yan himself, will be able to restore 20% of their HP, and the chance is quite high. With the Healing Fairy, Wu Yan didn't have to worry about letting Asuna go alone. Besides, Asuna isn't weak to begin with. Although she can't walk alone in the labyrinth area, she's more than capable in the wild. Speaking of which, after reaching the 75th floor, Kirito has almost reached the limit of solo players. It's still okay in the wild, but the labyrinth area can't support solo players anymore. Putting aside the fact that the monsters were getting stronger and stronger, their attack patterns were also getting more and more complicated. The higher the floor, the smaller the map of the labyrinth area, and the denser the monsters would be. Usually, when they encounter monsters, they would come in groups of at least 2 or 3. In such a situation, moving alone would be suicidal. That's why Kirito ended his solo strategy a long time ago. Although he didn't join any guild, whenever he went to the labyrinth area to level up, he would either drag Suda and the other moonlit black cats with him, or go with Klein and Furikazan. Suda and Klein were overjoyed to have such a strong teammate join them. They would drag Kirito to the labyrinth area every now and then. If someone didn't know better, they would think that they're best friends for life. With Asuna and the Healing Fairy in tow, the two charged straight into the labyrinth area. It didn't take long for the entrance to the labyrinth area to appear in front of the two players and their pet. At this time, the two saw an ancient staircase extending to the entrance of the labyrinth area's stone tower. The stone on the staircase has weathered a lot. It feels like it's going to shatter into pieces if you step on it. There's an iron door at the entrance of the labyrinth area. The iron door has long decayed. The iron spikes sticking out of the door have corroded to the point that they're stuck together. They don't have any sharpness to them at all. It's as if the door has lived for thousands of years. Even if it's corroded to the point that it looks like it's made of scrap metal, it's still guarding its post and blocking players who try to enter. That's the labyrinth area. Asuna raised her head and looked at the iron door. The thought of facing the strongest monster on the 99th floor aside from a boss made her feel a little worried. Ever since she met Wu Yan, she's had this kind of worry every time she goes into the labyrinth area. It's because she's afraid that if something goes wrong, her perfect life will fall apart because of an accident. Suddenly, a large and powerful hand wrapped around Asuna's small hand. Asuna's body trembled and the worry in her heart disappeared without a trace. A smile appeared on her face. "Let's go." Wu Yan nodded with a smile. He faced forward, placed his hand on the iron door, and gave it a gentle push. Boom! After a loud bang, the heavy iron door opened with a loud bang. Chapter 743. Rustle. The moment the door was opened, the sound of howling wind and howling entered their ears. Asuna's serious expression immediately crumbled and was replaced by fear. Even Wu Yan felt goosebumps all over his body. It looks like Asuna gulped and hugged Wu Yan's arm. The 99th floor's labyrinth. It doesn't look very pleasant. Wu Yan rolled his eyes at her. Is there really a labyrinth in Aincrad that I like? It's not like that. Asuna turned her head away, but she couldn't help but take a peek inside the labyrinth. It's just here, oh? Wu Yan blinked and looked at Asuna with a smile. Asuna, you're not scared, are you? Asuna forced a smile Her eyes started to wander. How? How was that possible? Why would I be scared? At this moment, another gust of wind blew and hit the two at the door. Asuna screamed and hugged Wu Yan's arm even tighter. Wu Yan was speechless. Why don't you go back and accompany Yui? No way. Asuna refused without hesitation. She glared at Wu Yan with tears in her eyes. Isn't it just a labyrinth? Even if there's something strange, it's just some mental-type monsters. Yes, that's right. Wu Yan slapped his forehead and said with a headache. But even if it's a spirit-type monster, it's still a spirit-type monster. Aren't you scared too? Asuna puffed up her cheeks and looked around the labyrinth with her chestnut-colored eyes. She let go of Wu Yan's arm and puffed up her chest. What's there to be scared of? They're just monsters. It's not like I haven't seen them before. As if to boost her courage, Asuna shouted this sentence very loudly. Then, she closed her eyes. Under Wu Yan's astonished expression, he charged straight in. Wu Yan was scared out of his wits. There are countless powerful monsters in the labyrinth area. Now that they were all gathered together because of the map, what if Asuna ran into a group of monsters or a trap? Wu Yan cursed and rushed in as well. The next moment, his vision darkened and a cold wind blew on his body, causing him to shiver a bit. Fortunately, his night vision isn't bad. It didn't take him long to adjust to the darkness. He saw Asuna was still rushing into the labyrinth, and he immediately went behind her and pulled her back. What the hell are you doing? Wu Yan yelled. Don't you know it's dangerous? Only then did Asuna realize what a stupid thing she had done. Her pretty face was filled with panic. She panicked and lowered her head apologetically. I'm sorry, Yan. Wu Yan couldn't vent his anger when he saw Asuna's reaction. Instead, his anger subsided bit by bit. He felt helpless. Don't be so reckless next time. Wu Yan wasn't angry anymore, but he still scolded her. Don't you know it's very worrying? Asuna stuck out her tongue. She squeezed herself into Wu Yan's embrace and acted like a spoiled child begging for forgiveness, making Wu Yan very annoyed. The light in the labyrinth area is very dim. It's so dim that it's comparable to a night without moonlight. Without good night vision, it's impossible to see what's inside. Wu Yan and Asuna's night vision isn't bad. They took some time to adjust to the darkness and looked around. They entered through the main entrance and saw a place that looked like a hall. Opening the map, Wu Yan and Asuna could only make out a vague outline of a labyrinth. The labyrinth is a spiral labyrinth that leads up to the top of the labyrinth. Of course, it's just a circular structure. They haven't walked through the labyrinth area in person, so there are no markings on the path. Wu Yan was annoyed when he saw the map. Asuna suddenly pulled Wu Yan's sleeve and pointed ahead. Not far in front of the two of them, at the entrance of the staircase, there was a large insect flying in the air. It was covered in a green carapace, and there were iron spikes on its wings. Its head was like a fly, and there was a stinger sticking out of its mouth. On top of it, there was a cold light flashing, making people's hearts tremble. That's the main monster type in the 99th floor labyrinth area. Asuna heaved a sigh of relief and patted her chest. It's not a spirit-type monster. That's great, Wu Yan let out a hollow laugh. This is the first time I've heard a girl say that insects are great. Asuna blushed and patted Wu Yan's shoulder. She then pulled out her rapier and said, What do you think? Do you want to go? Wait, let me do it. Wu Yan grabbed Asuna's rapier and stepped forward. We don't know the monster's attack pattern yet. Its attack power, defense, and skills haven't been confirmed yet. Let me try. Asuna pondered for a moment before nodding in agreement. Be careful. Wu Yan nodded and walked forward. He looked around the large insect and made sure it was alone. He then left the healing fairy beside Asuna. The monsters on the 98th floor labyrinth area can't deal much damage to Wu Yan. Based on his ability value increase, the monsters on the 99th floor shouldn't be too strong either. At least, they shouldn't be able to do much damage to him. However, ability value, attack, defense, and other ability values are just a side of the story. What really matters is the monster's attack pattern and skill type. Therefore, Wu Yan immediately activated charge. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of the green beetle. Holding the heaven gazer horizontally in his hand, he pointed the tip of the sword at the green beetle. The flash of the sword's skill fluctuated, and before the green beetle could be attracted, a crushing blow suddenly fell. Bang! The green beetle was sent flying, and its HP dropped to the yellow area. Virum, its aggro was successfully attracted to Wu Yan. A ferocious hissing sound came from its hideous maw. Flapping its wings like a fly, the green-shelled insect lowered its body and charged at Wu Yan with great speed. Its stinger glowed with a golden light. Wu Yan narrowed his eyes. He didn't choose to dodge. Instead, he stood up straight and rammed into the green beetle. Bang! The stinger hit Wu Yan's chest, and his HP dropped by about 10%. He couldn't help but smile. The green beetle's attack took away a little bit of his HP. Even if Asuna fought it, she wouldn't be able to do anything. However, when Wu Yan felt a numbing sensation in his body, the smile on Wu Yan's face froze. He couldn't move at all. Next to the HP bar, an abnormal status symbol appeared. It was paralysis. Virum. While Wu Yan was paralyzed, the green beetle continued to stab Wu Yan with its stinger. It didn't take long for it to take away another 10% of Wu Yan's HP. Asuna was shocked when she saw what happened. She raised her sword and charged at the green beetle. She used her heavy sword skill on the green beetle and knocked it back. At the same time, Wu Yan's body shook as he recovered from the numbness. His eyes flashed, and he jumped in front of the green beetle. Heaven Gazer glowed with a faint blue light. Cheek! The Heaven Gazer pierced through the cyan beetle's head, causing it to stop in its tracks. Its HP bar was emptied, and it shattered into pieces, filling the air with fragments. However, Wu Yan and Asuna were not happy at all. They looked at each other helplessly. Chapter 744. The green beetle's attack power was not high. Even with the effects of its skills, it only managed to reduce Wu Yan's HP by 1/10. Its normal attacks were even worse, but its defense was much higher than its attack power. From start to finish, the green beetle had to take 2 of Wu Yan's sword skills and 1 of Asuna's sword skills before its HP bar was emptied. That might not seem like a big deal, but 2 of the sword skills were used by Wu Yan. Wu Yan was a player who put all his points into strength. In terms of attack power, there was probably no one who could surpass him. Back then, when Wu Yan defeated the first floor's boss, he only used 1 sword skill to empty the boss's HP bar. When he defeated the special boss on Christmas Eve, he even used 1 sword skill to reduce the boss's HP by 1/8. That was a boss, not a normal monster. All this time, Wu Yan's attack power had been increasing as his level, equipment, and attributes increased. Under such circumstances, a monster in the labyrinth area could take 2 of his sword skills before dying. One could only imagine how strong its defense was. That was not the most important thing. In the past, Wu Yan had encountered monsters with strong defense but low attack power. He had even fought monsters with higher defense than the green beetle. What he did not expect was that the green beetle's skill had a paralyzing effect. Moreover, the first attack had already paralyzed Wu Yan. Wu Yan had specifically increased his resistance to paralysis and had even learned the paralysis skill. Even the rare paralysis item that Kuradil had painstakingly obtained could only paralyze Wu Yan for 3 seconds. Now, the skill used by a monster in the labyrinth area had paralyzed Wu Yan for nearly 3 seconds. If a normal player were to come here, once they were paralyzed, they could only wait for death. This was because the green beetle had just entered the labyrinth area and was lucky to be alone. The monsters that they would encounter next would be in groups of at least 2 or 3. Imagine a swarm of green beetles circling around you, then using their paralysis skills one after another. From the beginning to the end, you would be paralyzed on the spot until you died. How scary would that be? Wu Yan and Asuna looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Looks like we'll encounter these monsters later. I can't get hit so easily. Wu Yan pursed his lips. He touched his chest with a lingering fear. Based on what happened just now, Even if Asuna did not come over, he could have recovered from the paralysis and attacked the green beetle head-on. But that was if there was only one of them. If there was a crowd, Wu Yin felt a chill down his spine when he thought about it. Asuna also shook her head with a bitter smile. There are quite a few monsters that can add effects to their skills, but those with paralysis effects are the most dangerous type of monster. Asuna looked around and said in a serious tone, if the clearers want to explore this area, they need to form a party of at least 10 people. That way, they can help each other and switch between skills when they're activated. Otherwise, if they're surrounded by monsters, then we need some capable players. We need at least 2 or 3 people. Wu Yin rubbed his chin. We need to use throwing skills to lure the monsters one by one. Then, one player will be responsible for attracting aggro and tanking all the paralysis skills. Then, the others will be responsible for healing, no matter what. Asuna glanced at Wu Yin. If you're alone, you won't be able to do it. Says who? Wu Yin puffed up his chest. That cyan beetle's paralysis skill won't be able to kill me. Even if I'm surrounded, I have a healing fairy to heal me. That cyan beetle has low attack power. Even if it paralyzes me from head to toe, it won't be able to kill me, unless what? Asuna looked at Wu Yin with an annoyed expression. Wu Yin scratched his cheek in embarrassment. Unless there are more than 10 cyan beetles, there's no need for that. Asuna leaned her head in front of Wu Yin and pointed at Wu Yin's chest. As long as there are more than 4 or 5 green beetles, their paralysis skill will be able to paralyze you. Although they won't be able to clear your HP, they can keep you paralyzed. If no one comes to save you, then you can prepare to be paralyzed by those disgusting insects until you clear the game. Wu Yin smiled awkwardly and begged for mercy. Okay. It's my fault. Asuna nodded and put her hands on her hips. So, you should understand now, right? Understand? Wu Yin paused for a second and said, understand what? What? A dangerous look appeared on Asuna's face. I understand. I made the right choice by coming with you. Wu Yan's mouth twitched. He was speechless. Are you still holding a grudge against me for telling you to go home and accompany Yui? Sure enough, girls are very vengeful creatures. I understand. Wu Yin raised his hand and said weakly, it's my fault, and Asuna nodded her head in satisfaction. She patted Wu Yan's shoulder. It's good that you know you're wrong. Wu Yin looked away when he saw Asuna's smug face. He was afraid that if he continued to watch, he would not be able to resist the urge to punish her. Gotcha! The heaven gazer sliced through the head of a green beetle. The attack power emptied the green beetle's HP bar. The green beetle let out an ear-piercing shriek as it fell to the ground. Its body exploded into pieces, and a box appeared in front of Wu Yin and Asuna to calculate their loot. Wu Yin cracked his stiff neck. He checked the time. It has been about an hour since they entered the labyrinth. During this time, Wu Yin and Asuna lost at least 100 green beetles to the Heaven Gazer's blade. Wu Yin and Asuna felt their scalps tingling just a second ago, but now the area is much emptier than it used to be. With Asuna's help, their progress was a lot faster. If Wu Yin came alone, he would have to expend a lot of effort to clear out the green beetles so that he wouldn't die from paralysis. Yin, look! Asuna happily ran to Wu Yan's side and pointed at an item that just dropped. It's a rare item. Wu Yin raised an eyebrow. He looked at Asuna with a surprised look. You're pretty lucky. If you sell this item, it'll be worth at least 1 million soar. I'm not selling it. Asuna put away her interface. This item is very useful in a critical moment. You're right. Wu Yin thought for a while and said, you can put it away for now. Asuna nodded without hesitation. Since they were married, it didn't matter who kept the item. They could use it whenever they wanted. Unlike other players, if they got this item, they would have to come up with a satisfactory solution even if they didn't get into a fight over it. That's why Asuna nodded without hesitation. Asuna continued to move forward, slowly following the stairs. The dark labyrinth area was quiet, eerie, and terrifying under the chilly wind. Asuna was determined to not come here if she was alone, even if she was beaten to death. Huff, huff! The chilling wind blew past their bodies. Asuna couldn't help but lean into Wu Yan's arms. Wu Yan wanted to take care of Asuna, but he didn't know when a monster would jump out of the labyrinth. He raised his guard and looked around to give Asuna some time to rest. Woo! Suddenly, an unusual sound was emitted from a certain corner in front of them, causing the two of them to halt their footsteps. Their minds instantly became alert as they held their weapons and aimed them forward. But when they saw what was happening in the corner, their bodies froze. Asuna's pretty face turned deathly pale, without a trace of blood in it. Chapter 745. In front of him, in a corner, a black shadow suddenly flashed out from the wall. In an instant, it blended into another wall. Then, it suddenly stretched out from the other corner of the wall. It floated in the air and quietly wandered around. The shadow's body was blue in color. Its body was like a cloak that fluttered in the wind. It didn't have hands or feet. The only part of its body that wasn't covered by the blue cloak was its head. But it wasn't a human head. It was a bird's head. At this time, it was floating out from the front corner as if it didn't see anything. In the harmonious atmosphere of "you're good, I'm good, everyone," it floated past the two dumbfounded people on the spot in front of their eyes. Wu Yin and Asuna's eyes followed the movement of the shadow. They didn't come back to their senses for a long time. One of them looked at the shadow that was floating in front of them with a strange expression on his face. The other one's face gradually turned pale. Her red lips opened, closed, opened, closed, opened, and closed again. Wu Yin, who saw this scene, reacted. He cursed in his heart. Asuna's mouth opened wider and wider as he covered her mouth with his hand. She was about to scream when Wu Yin stopped her from doing so. Calm down. Calm down. Asuna. Wu Yin smiled bitterly as he covered Asuna's mouth. It's just a monster, not a ghost. Just as he said that, a gust of cold wind blew past his body, causing him to tremble violently. He looked around with a guilty conscience. He smiled awkwardly. Asuna finally realized what was going on. She glanced at the shadow with a teardrop in the corner of her eye. She quickly closed her eyes and reached out her hand. She hugged Wu Yan's arm tightly. Yin, Yin, Yin. Asuna didn't dare to look at the shadow anymore. She kept repeating Wu Yan's name. Her voice was full of panic, as if she was about to cry. It appeared. It really appeared. Wu Yan rubbed his forehead when he saw Asuna's terrified expression. Even if she's the legendary Flash Asuna, she's not going to be easy to deal with. Looks like she's not without weaknesses. She's still a girl after all. It's okay. Don't be afraid. Wu Yan patted Asuna's back. It doesn't have a long tongue. It's not covered in blood. And it doesn't have a rotten face. It's just a cloak with a bird's head. Don't make it sound so scary. Asuna shuddered violently. It's as if she added a long tongue to the other person's heart, a body covered in blood, a face that's half rotten. She pinched the soft flesh on Wu Yan's waist, but after Wu Yin consoled her, she calmed down. She was no longer as afraid as before. She gently opened her eyes and glanced at the shadow. Why isn't it attacking us? Asuna hid behind Wu Yin. She only peeked her head out. Her face was full of fear. It should be a monster that doesn't attack. Wu Yin opened his eyes and stared blankly at the shadow that floated 2 meters away from him. I didn't expect there to be a monster that doesn't attack players in the labyrinth. I thought it only existed in the wild. Is it the only one? Asuna clutched Wu Yan's shirt tightly. Her chestnut-colored eyes showed a hint of fear. It seems like she's really afraid of spirits and other monsters. There should be more than one, right? Wu Yin looked at the walls around them. It came out from the wall just now. That's very likely. The walls around us are filled with these monsters. Hearing this, Asuna swallowed her saliva. She shrunk her body a little and moved to the side. Wu Yin found it hilarious that she moved as far away from the walls as possible. I don't think you can go up there. Wu Yin pursed his lips and pulled the heaven gazer out. Then I'll go up there. Wait, don't leave me. Asuna grabbed Wu Yan's clothes and stopped him from going up there. Since it won't attack players, let's just go around it. No way. Wu Yan's mouth twitched. He couldn't stay calm anymore. Are you not going to fight this monster anymore? What's wrong? What's wrong with that? Asuna glared at Wu Yin. Monsters like these that won't actively attack players also have a setting that will attract all the surrounding monsters once they attack. Do you want to fight a large group of shadows and green beetles alone? Yes. We cleared out all the green beetles. There shouldn't be any more. Wu Yin shook his head helplessly. He focused his attention on the walls around him. A faint green light appeared in his eyes, and the next moment, the icons representing the units appeared in his vision. There are still 3 shadows. Wu Yin turned to Asuna and said, "Let me go up there. I should be able to handle 4 shadows with my level." Wu Yin knocked Asuna's head when he saw that she wanted to say something. "Look at you. You don't even have the guts to fight monsters. Who would believe that you're the one in charge of the clearers?" Wu Yin faced the front and waved the hand holding the Heaven Gazer. "I'll leave the back up to you." Seeing Wu Yan's firm expression, Asuna reluctantly let go of his hand and grabbed the hilt of her sword. Wu Yin chuckled, and he took a deep breath. Whoosh! He dashed forward and appeared in front of the shadow in the blink of an eye. Then, he swung the Heaven Gazer at the shadow. Chi! The black greatsword sliced through the shadow's body, but Wu Yin felt like he was slicing through air. He didn't feel anything solid at all. He couldn't help but be stunned. Roar! The shadowy figure's tiny eyes flashed red as he let out a shrill roar. He swung his cloak, and a pair of sharp beast claws tore through the cloak. The beast claws came out from behind the cloak, and it charged at Wu Yin. Looking at the incoming shadow, Wu Yin reacted. His eyes turned cold, and he waved his other hand that isn't holding a sword. A dark green needle shot out from his hand and smashed into the bird head of the shadow. Roar! The shadow screamed in pain when it was hit by the needle, and its HP dropped. Wu Yin was surprised that his attack didn't have any effect on the shadow, but he soon realized why. The head is the shadow's weakness. Roar! The shadow's HP dropped, and its red eyes became even redder. It opened its claws and turned around in the air. Its body flashed red, and it rushed at Wu Yin like a cannonball. Oomph! Wu Yin clenched his fist and took out another needle. He used toss, and his body flashed like a specter. The needle in his hand flashed, and he left a trail of light behind him as he appeared in front of the shadow. When he was about to collide with the shadow, the needle in his hand shot out and pierced between the shadow's eyebrows. Roar! The shadow howled in pain, and its charging momentum came to a halt. Whoosh! A shiny black greatsword stabbed into the shadow's head like a thunderbolt. The shadow's head only lasted for a split second before it was pierced through. Umbra's cries came to an abrupt end. His HP bar dropped rapidly until it hit rock bottom. Bang! The shadow's body shattered like glass and melted into the surrounding space. Before Wu Yin could put away his sword, Asuna's voice came from behind him. Be careful! As soon as Asuna's voice fell, a few flying sounds came from beside Wu Yin, accompanied by a bird-like chirping sound. Chapter 746. The blue figures quickly cut through the wall and rushed over. In just a few seconds, they had spread out and surrounded Wu Yin. They circled around him at an extremely fast speed, flashing a dense number of blue figures. Pairs of eyes filled with red light flashed rapidly, drawing red lines as they stared fiercely at Wu Yin, who was standing in the middle. Wu Yin also stared ahead, trying to see the figures of the shadows clearly. GG. The 3 shadows emitted a GG sound from their mouths. Pairs of sharp claws also stretched out from behind their cloaks and waved in front of him. Wu Yin narrowed his eyes and swept his gaze slightly. Now he could confirm that the shadows had 3 characteristics. First, their bodies were incorporeal. No matter how they attacked their bodies, their HP would not decrease. Second, their heads were the only part that could be attacked. Moreover, it was their weak point. Even if they were hit by a pitiful throwing skill, their HP would be reduced by a considerable amount. If they were hit by a sword skill, they would be killed in 1 hit. Third, when a shadow died, It had the ability to attract the aggro of the surrounding monsters to the player who killed it. However, the effective range was not clear. These thoughts flashed through his mind. Wu Yin made up his mind and lowered his body slightly. Then, with a stomp of his feet, his body turned into an afterimage, and like lightning, he rushed towards one of the shadows. Gee. Just as Wu Yan's body moved, a sharp cry rang out. The blue figures that were originally circling Wu Yan in a circle suddenly pounced on Wu Yan at the same time, creating a scene of countless shadows covering the sky and covering the earth, violently surging towards Wu Yan. Pooh! Wu Yan's face tensed up. His body rushed straight into the dense blue shadows. His speed was pushed to the limit. The heaven gazer in his palm was like a whip. Under Wu Yan's swing, a fierce wind blew. The sharp blade of the sword seemed to have grown eyes. The dagger pierced through the head of one of the shadows, and with a vicious twist, the shadow immediately materialized, revealing the full appearance of the shadow. The HP bar was also emptied. Sure enough, attacks aimed at the body are ineffective, while attacks aimed at the head are more lethal. With my attack power, even without using a sword skill, I can kill the shadow in one move. Asna's words. Using sword skills, you can also kill him in one move. Wu Yin grinned as his thoughts raced. He looked at the remaining afterimages with a sinister look in his eyes. Just as Wu Yin planned to quickly kill the remaining two shadows, the dense blue shadows that filled the entire space stopped pouring down. The afterimages that filled the sky gradually dissipated, and the remaining two shadows appeared before Wu Yan. They retreated a distance away and quickly opened their mouths under Wu Yan's watchful gaze. As soon as they opened their mouths, the space around them started to fluctuate. A cold current descended from the sky and swept past the two shadows. After that, as the shadows were opening their mouths, the space around them started to fluctuate. As the two shadows opened their mouths, they gradually turned into a stream of black light. Wu Yan's expression changed when he saw this. Asuna, who was observing the shadow's attack pattern, couldn't help but gasp in shock. They can use a breath skill. Damn, Wu Yan muttered to himself. The characteristics of these shadows are very clear. If you don't understand their characteristics, you'll probably die without knowing why. But if you understand their characteristics, it'll be much easier to deal with them. This meant that the monsters in the labyrinth on the 99th floor were much easier to deal with compared to the monsters in the wild. The monsters in the labyrinth on the 99th floor were much easier to deal with compared to the monsters in the wild, like Asuna and Kirito. Cyan Beetle. Low attack power, high defense, but can use a paralysis skill. Shadow monsters. Low attack and defense, but they can nullify physical attacks. They can also use a breath skill that only super high-level monsters or even bosses can use. It seems like the 99th floor of the labyrinth is more focused on the AI of the monsters. While Wu Yan was muttering to himself, the two shadows started to use their breath skills. Two air currents filled with the smell of decay cut through the darkness and swept towards Wu Yan. Wu Yan could already smell the stench before the decaying air even got close to him. He took a step back before taking a step forward. While the air fluctuated around him, the decaying breath came right at him. He narrowed his eyes and charged at the two shadows. Twisting his body in the air, he dodged the attacks by a hair's breadth. Wu Yan lifted his head and looked at the two shadows floating in the air. His eyes flashed with a cold light, and he sped up again. He disappeared from the spot, and when he reappeared, he was already behind the two shadows. Evil sword attack. A green glow flashed on the sword of Heaven Gazer, illuminating the surrounding dark space. With a tearing sound similar to cutting through gauze, the black sword carrying the green glow burst out. Like a wooden club, it viciously smashed towards the head of the shadow, directly smashing that bird-like head into smithereens. Squeak, squeak. The other shadow finally realized that its companion was dead. It immediately let out a low growl and clenched its large claws, tearing apart the cloak and reaching for the stunned Wu Yan. Unfortunately, the Shadow's AI was only developed for combat and did not have any intelligence. Otherwise, it would have immediately retreated when it saw the smile on Wu Yan's face. Hey, just as the shadow's claws were about to hit Wu Yan, a chestnut-colored figure suddenly appeared behind the shadow. It raised one hand, and a long sword as thin as a needle burst out with a powerful ripple. It pierced straight towards the shadow's claws. Bang! The rapier hit the shadow's beast claw. The impact sent the shadow's light body flying backwards. At the same time, Wu Yin recovered from the stun effect, and his body leaned forward as he dashed forward. His right hand gripped tightly onto the Heaven Gazer, and he swung it out. Crushing blow. Wu Yin bellowed. Heaven Gazer shined brightly, and the next moment, it smashed into the shadow's head. Bang! A muffled explosion was heard from the top of Umbra's head. Umbra's body trembled violently as its huge head was blown apart. A line of code representing a wound appeared on its neck. Red fragments that looked like blood floated up into the air and shattered into pieces that filled the air. Yen, Asuna recovered from her stiff state. She sheathed her rapier, and she jogged over to Wu Yan. "Are you okay?" Wu Yan raised an eyebrow and raised his head. "Do you think your husband is that weak?" Asuna smacked Wu Yan's chest. "Stop messing around." Okay, let's stop messing around." Wu Yan grabbed Asuna's hand before she could slap him again. His expression turned serious. "Asuna, did you notice something?" Asuna blinked. "What did you notice?" Wu Yan smiled mysteriously. "Open the map." Asuna nodded obediently. Then she opened her map and looked at it. What she saw stunned her. She couldn't help but cry out in surprise. "Why is there an unrecorded map here?" You too?" Wu Yan rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Then my guess should be correct." "Guess?" "Yeah." Wu Yan told Asuna. "Didn't you notice that every time we kill a cyan beetle or shadow, the map of the labyrinth opens up a little?" Asuna's eyes lit up when she heard that. "You're saying that's right." Wu Yan crossed his arms in front of his chest. Paralysis skill, breath skill. The skills of the monsters on the 99th floor are obviously stronger than the monsters themselves. This doesn't conform to SAO's unspoken rule of absolute fairness. Normally, under such circumstances, players should be given some benefits. That's why I'm guessing that killing monsters and opening up the map is a benefit for the players. In other words, Wu Yan smirked and looked at the top of the labyrinth. "Kill as many monsters as you can. The boss room might be open as well." Chapter 747. The more monsters you kill, the more monsters you kill, the more maps you have in the labyrinth area. With this sentence, the monsters in the labyrinth area are facing a disaster. The buzzing sound of the cyan beetles, the squeaking sound of the shadows, a man and a woman yelling, and the sound effects of their sword skills filled the labyrinth area for a whole day. It wasn't until the sky was completely dark that the noises in the labyrinth area started to slow down a little. At this time, Wu Yan and Asuna arrived at the top of the labyrinth area. Around them, the fragments of the monsters that just died were still floating around, but the two of them ignored it and opened their personal interface to check the map. It turned out that Wu Yan's guess was spot on. The monsters in the 99th floor had their own unique characteristics. For players who are good at strategy, it's a lot easier to clear the labyrinth after understanding their attack patterns. However, for the other players, even the top players in the clearers, without a proper party, it's going to be hard to clear the labyrinth with the unique characteristics of the monsters. This situation has formed a balance. SAO has always been a game of balance, and although they don't want to admit it, they have never seen an unbalanced area before. Under such circumstances, it's okay to add some powerful skills to increase the difficulty of the labyrinth area, but it's obvious that the paralysis skill and the breath skill have already surpassed the normal difficulty. Therefore, in order to maintain balance, the monster's strength has increased, and it's harder for the players to deal with them. Naturally, the corresponding benefits will be unlocked, and the monsters will be killed and the map will be unlocked. After a day of clearing the labyrinth, Wu Yan and Asuna have already memorized 1/3 of the labyrinth's map. This is a lot faster than the previous time they were in the labyrinth. Of course, Not everyone can clear the labyrinth area like Wu Yin and Asuna. If it were the clearers, they would have a hard time dealing with the paralysis skill and the breath skill, and they might even fail miserably. But for the clearers, this setting is basically non-existent. After all, the monsters aren't easy to deal with, and even if the map is unlocked after killing the monsters, the progress of clearing the labyrinth area won't be much better compared to the average labyrinth area. It can be said that this setting is specially designed for the strong players. Asuna didn't say anything, but Wu Yin was a little confused. Was this setting set from the very beginning, or did Heathcliff, or Kaiba Akihiko, change it later? If Heathcliff was the one who changed it, then he should know that this setting would be a godsend for him. A labyrinth wouldn't be able to stop him at all. The reason why he was weaker than the clearers in the past was because it was hard to find a boss room. Now that he had activated such a setting, wasn't it the same as giving the room to the boss of this dungeon right into his arms? Could it be that Heathcliff really want the 100th floor labyrinth? Could he want to clear the labyrinth? Heathcliff, Asuna will, and Asuna will, and Asuna. Then, this setting should have been set from the very beginning. Otherwise, it won't be good for him if he can't figure out Heathcliff's intentions. Wu Yin shook his head. He didn't know if it's the former or the latter. He decided to stop thinking about it. After clearing the dungeon, he would have completed his quest. In this world, the only people he cared about were Asuna, Yui, Fuji, Kirito, and the others. He didn't care about the rest. It's getting dark. Wu Yin looked at the time and turned to Asuna. It's time to go back. Asuna nodded, and the two of them took out a teleportation crystal and raised it above their heads. Teleport. A flash of light enveloped the two of them, and they disappeared from the spot not long after. Aincrad, 55th floor, Auntie Sachi. Yui twisted her body uneasily and looked at Sachi, who was hugging her. Are you sure it's going to be okay? Yui-chan, you've asked me this question many times. Sachi smiled bitterly and said gently, Don't worry, I promise it'll be fine. Yeah, Yui. Serene, who was holding a bottle of potion and fiddling with something, turned her head and said enviously, If I were your mother, I would be overjoyed. Yui is such a good girl. Silica hugged Pina tighter. Wu Yin and Ai-san will be so happy. Look, everyone is saying that. Sachi rubbed Yui's head. It'll be fine. Yui took a deep breath and her expression became firm. Yeah, it'll be fine. At this moment, at the door, a series of knocks sounded in everyone's ears. Hearing the knocks, the girls in the room immediately stood up. They're coming. Cheyenne shouted excitedly. She didn't even care about the potion in her hand. It must be Asuna and Yin and Ai-san. Silica went to the door and opened it. As expected, Wu Yin and Asuna are standing outside the door. It's already dark outside, and they're already back at home. Hey, Silica. Wu Yin waved at Silica with a smile. You're the one who opened the door. Asuna made a bet with me. Wu Yin and Ai-san. Silica touched her head embarrassedly. Welcome back. The strategy should be fine, right? It should be fine, right? What do you mean by should be fine? Answer me seriously. Cheyenne popped her head out from behind Silica and complained, I'm very curious about the 99th floor labyrinth. Asuna turned her head away and said seriously, Serene-chan, don't be curious. You don't like labyrinths like that. Cheyenne didn't listen to Asuna. She was even more curious. Just as she was about to say something, Sachi dragged her to the back. That's enough. You can ask your questions later. The most important thing right now is Yui. Cheyenne and Silica's eyes lit up and they quickly moved aside. Sachi smiled and pushed Yui in front of Wu Yin and Asuna. Sachan, didn't you have something to say to Daddy and Mommy? What's the matter? Asuna squatted down and looked at Yui. What's the matter? Mommy will do my best to satisfy you. Yui calmed down and grabbed Wu Yin and Asuna's hands. Daddy, Mommy, I have something to show you. Yui dragged Wu Yin and Asuna into the house. She brought them to a table where a steaming hot dish was laid out on the table. Wu Yin scratched his cheeks and said in an uncertain tone, Cooking? Oni Ai-san. Sachi said something shocking. I made all these dishes myself. Wu Yin and Asuna were stunned, and they looked at Yui in surprise. Yui, you made all these? Yes. Yui lowered her head. Daddy and Mommy were working hard to clear the labyrinth. I wanted to help, but I didn't have the ability, so, you made these dishes? Wu Yin stroked Yui's face lovingly. Asuna was touched and hugged Yui. Yui, Mommy is very happy. Really? Yui raised her head and asked hopefully, will Mom and Dad like it? I like it. Of course I like it. Wu Yin smiled and hugged Yui. As expected of my daughter, you must have put in a lot of effort to make these dishes. They must be delicious. Yui shook her head. Auntie Sachi taught me how to make these dishes. I can't make them myself. I don't have any cooking skills, so they must be delicious. Wu Yin and Asuna said in unison. They looked at each other and smiled. All right, let's try Yui's dishes. Hi. Chapter 748. In the blink of an eye, 3 days have passed. During these 3 days, the clearers started to work on the 99th floor. The clearers also arrived at the 99th floor one after another. They formed a larger team and started exploring the labyrinth area with the clearers as their goal. The clearers lost 15 players in the battle to clear the 98th floor's boss. This number of casualties is enough to make the clearers tremble in fear. Because of this, the clearers were in a slump for a while. However, they didn't slack off at all in terms of clearing the boss. No matter how big the casualties were, the clearers didn't give up on clearing the floor. On the contrary, the clearers became more and more invested in the clearers. Not only did the casualties not affect them, but it also made them more determined to clear the floor. Because they don't know if they will be the next one to die if they continue like this, the hope of clearing the floor is right in front of them. 2 more floors, and they will be able to return to the real world. How can they give up now? However, perhaps because of the 15 casualties, the atmosphere in the clearers has improved a lot. Not sure if it's because of the excitement, the hot-headed clearers who wanted to rush into the labyrinth area and the boss room all day have gradually calmed down. They started to accept the assignment. Of course, there are those who calm down. Now, the chaos in the clearers has almost calmed down. This is all thanks to Suda and Klein. They kept their guild members in check and prevented the situation from getting out of hand. In short, the clearers are a group of idiots who won't shed tears until they see the coffin. They will only unwillingly stop when the coffin appears. In Klein's words, the clearers are a group of problem children. They have problems all over their bodies. Problem children with IQ comparable to children. Fortunately, everything was progressing in a good direction. Since the 99th floor isn't very big and there aren't many wild areas, the clearers have successfully explored all the wild areas and pushed into the labyrinth area. It was inevitable. The clearers were caught off guard by the cyan beetle's paralysis skill and the shadow's breath skill. Putting aside those 2 skills, the cyan beetle's defense and the shadow's illusory body were more than enough to make the clearers suffer. If it weren't for Wu Yin and Asuna sharing the information with the clearers, they wouldn't have survived. He was afraid that the clearers would suffer more casualties on the first day of entering the labyrinth. Fortunately, after the initial surprise, the clearers gradually stabilized their strategy. Although they haven't been in the labyrinth area for a long time, the information that killing monsters will open up the map didn't escape their eyes, which made the clearers very excited. In the past, finding the room of the guardian boss in the labyrinth area was the main problem for all players. Whether or not to clear a floor, exploring the labyrinth area was the first problem, the location of the guardian boss was the second problem, and the final problem was how to kill the guardian boss. Of these 3 problems, the first and third required specific planning and discussion before they could be solved. But no matter what, the initiative is in the clearer's hands. Only the second problem requires a little bit of luck, and it's the most time-consuming problem. It's easy to imagine how good it is for the clearers who are eager to clear the labyrinth area by killing monsters to open up the map. But that's the clearer's business. It's no longer important for Wu Yin, because his map is already open. On the first day, Wu Yin and Asuna took down 1/3 of the labyrinth area. On the second day, They were more prepared, so they managed to take down 80% of the remaining two-thirds of the labyrinth area. Today, the entire labyrinth area is visible on the map. Looking at the red dot marked in the corner of the map file, Wu Yin sighed faintly as he constantly speculated about his own luck. After killing a monster, a small portion of the labyrinth's map will be unlocked. This small portion of the map is random. In other words, it's very likely that you'll find the location of the boss's room when you kill the first monster. It's also possible that you'll find the boss's room when the last portion of the map is unlocked. Unfortunately, Wu Yin is the latter. On the other hand, Asuna was also looking at the red dot on the map. She looked at Wu Yin with a worried expression. She tugged at his sleeve, and she pleaded with him in a pitiful tone. Hey, what should we do next? Do you even need to ask? Wu Yin pursed his lips and glanced at Asuna. Of course we're going to kill it. Do you want to farm insects and ghost birds here? Asuna put away her pitiful expression and pouted. I knew you'd say that. Asuna put away the map and swung her sword. Well then, let's go. Wu Yan's mouth twitched when he heard Asuna's words. He stared at her beautiful face for a long time before he finally asked, You really don't want to think about it? Asuna stepped forward without looking back and waved her hand. I didn't ask you to go back to the clearers, so don't ask me to go back either. Wu Yan's lips twitched. He wanted to say something, but when he saw Asuna's unwavering expression, he knew he couldn't just throw a meat bun at a dog. It's a one-way trip. This isn't the first time this has happened. Every time Wu Yin and Asuna stumbled upon the boss room, there would be a conversation. Wu Yin tried to persuade Asuna to go back, but Asuna refused. Asuna also tried to persuade Wu Yin to go with the clearers, but Wu Yin refused. Asuna also tried to persuade Wu Yin to go with the clearers, but Wu Yin refused. In the end, Wu Yin and Asuna went up against the boss room together. This time is no exception. They didn't need to talk to each other to know the other's choice. At the end of the day, it's just a show of mutual concern. One is worried that Wu Yin will never return. The other is worried that he won't be able to take care of his wife when the time comes. However, both of them are very stubborn. One of them would rather die than share the fruits of his labor with others, and the other would rather die than sit at home and watch the other person enter a dangerous place. Their brains are as hard as a bull's tendon. From this point of view, it's no wonder they're a married couple. Following the instructions on the map, the two of them killed all the green beetles and shadows that blocked their way as they made their way towards the boss's room. The 99th floor's labyrinth area was not large, but the density of monsters was very high. Unfortunately, it was not enough to stop the powerful couple. After 30 minutes, there was only one path left in the labyrinth area. At the end of the path, there's a familiar door waiting for someone to open it. Standing in front of the door, Asuna turned around and fixed Wu Yan's collar. We'll succeed, right? Of course. Of course. Wu Yan reached out and hugged Asuna. Maybe Yui has already made dinner and is waiting for us to go back to eat. That's exciting. Asuna looked up at Wu Yan's face and smiled. Then, she closed her eyes. Wu Yan caressed Asuna's face, lowered his head, and kissed Asuna's lips. The two of them hugged each other in front of the boss room's door, kissing. After a while, they finally separated. Let's go. Chapter 749. Boom! The heavy door was pushed open by two hands that were completely disproportionate to the size of the door. The sound reverberated in the silent surroundings. The cold wind that was blowing all the time had already stopped, causing the atmosphere to become exceptionally heavy. When the door is fully opened, Wu Yin and Asuna looked at each other. They held their weapons and walked into the room. When they entered the room, the door behind them slammed shut. The two of them didn't look surprised at all. They didn't even have the urge to look back. They have encountered this scene many times. Ever since the 75th floor, every floor's boss room has two settings. One is the crystal nullification zone, and the other is the trap activation zone. In other words, once they stepped into the room of the boss, they would not be able to leave unless the boss died. Wu Yin and Asuna already knew about this setting. They didn't need to look back to confirm it. They stopped in their tracks and were attracted by the strange scene in front of them. In front of them, a thick black fog has shrouded the entire room. It's like a worm wriggling in the air. A few black fog-like things are floating around the fog. They look very similar to the shadows outside. The only difference is that their cloaks are black and their heads are covered in black fog. They can't see what's inside. However, on the head of the black fog, there was a pair of scarlet red light spots that were emitting a faint glow. They flickered like eyes and surged like an evil spirit. Finally, traces of heart-wrenching screeches were emitted from the black fog. It was as though something was trapped within the black fog. It's a strange scene. Even Wu Yin has the urge to take a step back, let alone Asuna. Her serious face has collapsed. What is that? Asuna moved behind Wu Yin. She gripped her rapier so tightly that it's shaking. Where's the boss? Who knows? Wu Yin looked at the black fog that seemed to cover the sky. The already dim scene seemed to have turned even darker due to the rolling black fog. Furthermore, the strange black fog in the middle made it hard for even light to penetrate it. Wu Yin, who tried to get a better look at the situation inside, was defeated in an instant. Numerous ear-piercing screeches reverberated within the black mist. Densely packed black shadows shuttled back and forth within the black mist like demons hiding in the darkness. Their crimson-red eyes looked eerie and scary in this dark environment. Wu Yin couldn't help but curse. This Kaiba Akihiko really has a bad taste. Asuna looked timidly at the black fog hovering in the air. The scene made her scalp tingle. If she didn't know that this was the boss room and they were about to face the boss, she probably wouldn't have dared to stay here any longer. Asuna had no choice but to calm herself down. After a moment of hesitation, she asked, "What should we do? Should we go over?" Wu Yin narrowed his eyes. He pointed Heaven Gazer at the fog and held Asuna's hand. "Follow behind me. We'll walk over slowly," Asuna nodded. She let Wu Yin hold her hand and walked towards the fog with light steps. Just when the two of them were about 5 meters away from the black fog, the constantly squirming black fog suddenly paused. Immediately after, it began to churn violently. An indistinct black shadow flashed through the black fog. At the same time, a crimson blood glow surfaced from within. Traces of a strange crimson color began to fluctuate out. "Be careful!" The sudden change startled Wu Yin. As soon as he reminded Wu Yin, he heard a shrill shriek. The black mist stopped moving, and after a brief moment of silence, countless black mist shadows shot out from the black mist and rained down on Wu Yin like a torrential downpour. "Yin, back off!" Wu Yin and Asuna shrieked at the same time as they leaped back. The black shadows increased their speed and chased after them relentlessly. In an instant, they were right in front of the two retreating figures. They were about to envelop Wu Yin and Asuna. Wu Yin furrowed his brows, and he clenched his fist. Heaven Gazer flashed with a dark green radiance, and he swung it out. Following his movement, a strong gust of wind burst out from Heaven Gazer into the sky and blew at the black fog shadow. Whooshing noises kept ringing out as the black fog shadows were blown away by the strong wind. The black fog shadows also showed signs of retreating, but the number of black fog shadows was simply too terrifying. Therefore, there were still many black fog shadows that desperately shot down, enveloping the two of them. There's no other way. Wu Yin stopped abruptly and steadied himself. He pulled out the elucidator from his back. "Asuna, attack." "Got it." Asuna immediately dashed to Wu Yan's side and saw the black shadows coming at them like a pack of wolves. The effect of sword skill flashed on their swords, and they slashed at the black shadows. Bang! The sharp edge of their swords was extremely powerful. The black shadows were instantly torn apart. Wu Yan's and Asuna's faces were filled with joy, but they quickly turned gloomy again. In the blink of an eye, the black fog that had been torn apart turned into a gust of gray gas and quickly spread out. Just when the two of them thought that it would attack, it turned around and drilled into the squirming black fog. Something is wrong. Wu Yin and Asuna had the same thought. But before they could take a closer look, the other shadowy figures started pouncing at them as well. Wu Yin quickly swung his swords. Every time he swung his swords, a black shadow would be pierced through. However, Compared to the number of black shadows behind them, the black shadows were almost negligible. After killing dozens of black shadows, Wu Yin finally couldn't help but take a deep breath. On the other hand, Asuna was in a similar situation. Dozens of black shadows were pierced through by her swords, but there were still more black shadows coming at them. Over time, as the two of them continued to fight, the dark red clouds began to churn violently. As the dark clouds churned, a faint blood-red color seeped through them. It was eerie and sinister. Every time a black shadow was killed, its body would turn into gray smoke and replenish the black clouds. The blood-red color became thicker and thicker. As time passed, the black clouds began to emit an oppressive aura. As the cloud churned, shrill screams could be heard. The Heaven Gazer and Elucidator danced in the air, cutting down the black shadows one by one. However, Wu Yin didn't feel happy at all. He frowned as a bad feeling surfaced in his heart. He waved his swords faster and faster. One after another, illusory sword shadows overlapped with each other. In an instant, a huge wave of black shadows was sliced into pieces. Taking advantage of this gap, Wu Yin lifted his head and looked at the gigantic black mist above his head. His pupil shrunk when he saw what it is. Wu Yin caught a glimpse of a 2 to 3 meter tall figure that looked like a flame within the black mist. With the replenishment of the gray mist, the figure slowly solidified into a solid form. Could it be? Suddenly, the black fog shrunk as though it had received a shock. A momentary silence also appeared in the repeatedly reverberating sharp cries. A blood glow soared within the dark black cloud layer. Faintly, a bone-chilling chewing sound was gradually being emitted from within. Wu Yan's eyes glinted when he saw this. Raising his swords, he took a step forward and charged towards the black mist. "Yen," Asuna exclaimed in shock. "You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."